Liable, an empire ruled by dragons. Here, when a sleeping dragon awakens, a new emperor is born. And I had to face it again in this peaceful and beautiful place. Hasolan sat quietly in the carriage seat, resting her chin on her hand in thought, when a maid's voice suddenly rang out, "Oh my." She peeked in and saw her mistress looking at the scenery outside the carriage window. "Are you awake, my lady? We have arrived. That lake is the dragon's abyss that you will be managing. How beautiful it is." Hasolan did not feel the slightest bit of joy like the maid showed. She sighed to herself, "Today is the day I never want to look back on." Hasolan quickly stepped out and replied coldly for the sake of it, yes. She furrowed her brows, her voice carrying a hint of disgust. "It's truly beautiful. This is the 5th time. Here lies the man I once loved. One day, when I was 23 years old and had just been appointed as the manager of this dragon's abyss, I woke the dragon sleeping deep at the bottom of the lake and met him. Since then, my life." Hasolan tried to recall the memory of that moment. As soon as she saw Acre lands, she had waded quickly into the lake and lost her balance. Fortunately, he caught her in time. "You must be careful." Hasolan felt immense regret, because she knew that once she met him, her life was no longer her own. The scenery around her began to change in her mind. Outside the castle window, lightning bolts streaked across the pitch-black sky. Someone's voice shouted, "Your Majesty, are you pardoning Grand Duke Solaris?" The Grand Duke committed treason. He must receive a fitting punishment, even if the Grand Duke is your Majesty's mate. Akerlands was resting his chin on his hand, contemplating those pleas. Then he suddenly sat up straight, his elegant eyebrows furrowed. He repeated that word again, "mate." How ridiculous. Hasolan was standing outside that room with her maid. She had something to say to him. However, this intention of hers also unintentionally made her overhear those heart-wrenching, hurtful words. Akerlands did not hesitate to tell his officials, "The Grand Duke is not my mate." Immediately, she returned to her room alone and sat quietly, watching the raindrops fall outside the window. Hasolan silently reminded herself, once more, "Don't let things like this hurt you. You're used to it anyway." Hasolan O'Day, blinded by love, sacrificed 14 years of her life to be devoted to him. But in the end, did not become the empress of the empire, but instead became Grand Duke Solaris, even though she should have become the empress. The maid beside her then, who was also the old maid serving her now, spoke up, "I really can't understand His Majesty. The Grand Duke can use the special power of a dragon's mate, and with that ability, you protected His Majesty during the Civil War and achieved many victories. But I don't understand why His Majesty." Hasolan couldn't bear to hear any more, so she turned away and cut the maid off. That's enough. Despite being used for so long, instead of being treated like a mate, she was ultimately framed for treason. Hasolan frowned in annoyance and told the maid, "If you insult His Majesty, I will not forgive you, even if it's you." Hasolan knew deep down what made her say those words, but she still didn't care, because she always clung to a sliver of hope that one day he would care for her. But the very next day, one of Akerland's attendants came and told Hasolan, "His Majesty has sent you a gift." Hasolan's gloomy face from the past few days vanished, replaced by an expectant gaze and a happy smile. However, reality made her collapse. Her eyes darkened as she opened the gift box. Inside was a black silk sash, not long but not short, enough for a girl like her to complete her final given task. Only when standing on the precipice of her life did Hasolan O'Day realize it. She burst out laughing, a long, painful laugh. Realizing she wasn't even allowed to be by his side, she clutched the gift box to her chest and muttered to herself, like a soft silk sash in the shape of a snake. In her final moments, she did not pray to the gods for another life, nor did she want to reminisce about her life. Instead, she stood on a chair, in front of her the noose bestowed by the emperor. She cried out helplessly, "I'm exhausted. I just want to rest." Suddenly, a loud voice called out in the space, "My lady, please wake up." Hasolan's beautiful eyes flew open. She felt a sense of emptiness, mixed with an indescribable disappointment. But unfortunately, the maid was now right in front of her, once again waking her from her daze that we've arrived at the dragon's abyss. Hasolan thought to herself, death does not bring rest. She couldn't even believe reality as she looked at her hands, which had brought Hasolan O'Day back 14 years. As soon as Hasolan stepped out of the carriage, the surrounding scenery immediately stunned her. Hasolan cried out in misery. Oh my god, this is the first place I was appointed as a manager. The maid beside her had already followed Hasolan out. She seemed very excited. From today, my lady, you will manage the dragon's abyss. Don't be surprised when you hear this, because right under that lake is... Hasolan finished the maid's sentence. The black dragon. The one who will become the next emperor is sound asleep, right? The maid smiled and told her, as expected of our manager, you know so much. Her words also unintentionally brought back the painful memories of the past that she desperately wanted to forget. That's right, I know very well. Because on this day 14 years ago, while strolling around the lake, I woke him up and everything started from there. Hasolan recalled Akerland's heartless words. The Grand Duke is not my mate. She placed a hand over her heart and thought, but I'm already dead. Is this a dream, or am I just rewatching the film of my life? She angrily clenched her fists, so tight that her whole hand trembled. In any case, it's so ironic to return to the very day I first met him. Hasolan muttered, it's truly beautiful. The maid appeared behind her, smiling as she asked for her opinion. Today is your first day in the position. Would you like to take a walk around the lake? Suddenly, upon hearing the suggestion, Hasolan immediately snapped, no, I don't want to. She spun around and walked away, clutching her luggage tightly. I'm tired. I'm going back to my room to rest. The maid quickly tried to step forward and stop her. Wait, this is a forest path. Let me guide you back, my lady. However, Hasolan didn't even glance back at her once. This left the maid utterly surprised, Watching Hasolan's retreating back, she thought to herself, how does my lady know the way here? Hasolan also had a heart full of worries. Tea first. I thought it was just a dream before death, and I fell asleep. But once again, the maid's call woke her up. My lady, please wake up. We've arrived at the dragon's abyss. Hasolan looked at her with utter astonishment. She couldn't believe she was caught in an infinite loop. When I woke up on this day for the second time, I realized the truth. She remained silent, feeling a sense of unease. I just fell asleep at the inn. Why am I here again? Finally, after piecing everything together, she was stunned that I was trapped on the day I most wanted to erase from my life. It was that familiar shout again, ringing out once more like a death knell. My lady, please wake up. Hasolan's mood sank even lower because of it. Damn it. I tried to sleep like before, but when I open my eyes, it's today again. I can't escape this place by falling into sleep. Hasolan looked at her hands. She had just thought of something important. Could it be, to escape this situation, I have to wake him up again? How ridiculous. I never wanted a tomorrow in the first place. Hasolan looked gloomily towards the far side of the dragon's abyss and muttered, I'd rather die again. She had actually stabbed herself with her own self-defense knife, but she still returned once more to this damn, terrible loop. It was still the maid's voice calling out, my lady, please wake up. Hasolan was so fed up with this. Even if I die, that voice kept calling out after Hasolan's previous suicide attempts. Please wake up, my lady. Hasolan froze. I have no other choice but to return to today. In the end, she could do nothing but accept the reality that was happening to her. What is this? She thought. I can't even choose to die as I wish. Hasolan tilted her head and smiled, a harmless smile that carried a great deal of anger. Is there any wine? What miserable life. Why am I the only one who has to go through this? I just want to die and rest in peace. It's not too much to ask. Used for 14 years and then thrown away. My path of suffering should have ended. Because she had drunk quite a lot of wine, Hasolan now couldn't believe she had made it to the Dragon's Abyss Lake. She unconsciously shouted, even if I'm stuck here for the rest of my life, I won't be weak. I will absolutely not wake you. Perhaps her shout had unintentionally disturbed the dragon in the deep lake. Suddenly, that black dragon spoke in response. Finally, you've returned to my arms. My Solan. It seemed as if Hasolan had just had a nightmare. She woke with a start, her breathing rapid. Gasp! Sweat drenched her forehead as Hasolan reflexively sat up. She was utterly bewildered. What was that? I definitely felt something strange just now. Oh, my head. What on earth did I do last night? Suddenly, Akerlands, who had appeared out of nowhere, smirked slyly. Just hearing his voice, Hasolan's entire body stiffened. That you're awake? It's best you don't drink anymore. Hasolan unconsciously looked in the direction of the voice, but her eyes held many different fears. I won't get involved with you anymore. I've made up my mind. But why? Akerland smiled. His way of speaking was also theatrical. Or from now on, you're only allowed to drink in front of me. Seeing that Hasolan still wouldn't speak, Akerland stepped forward and gently squeezed her chin. Answer me. You are the manager of the Dragon's Abyss, after all. Hasolan felt her world completely collapse, involved with him again. The Emperor of the Liabal Empire, the black dragon Acrelands. The him in my memory was always perfect. If someone was necessary for the national interest, he would not hesitate to approach them regardless of their status. And if they became an obstacle, he would easily strike them down, a chillingly rational existence. That's why he was a perfect king. The man I dedicated everything to love. No, the man I used to love. But Hasolan looked in panic at the person opposite her. She saw him leisurely sipping red wine, silently returning her intense gaze. Why him? Acrelands closed the distance with Hasolan, once again taking her chin in his hand. Your face is pale. Are you still not sober? Hasolan couldn't believe this was real. He's in front of me, isn't he? Why did I wake up outside the dragon's abyss? Acrelands couldn't just keep talking like that. He sat down beside Hasolan and rested his forehead on his hand in thought. Hasolan thought of something and suddenly flinched. Could it be yesterday Acrelands also saw something in her eyes and glanced over. Don't you remember what happened last night? You woke me up. Hearing this, Hasolan's eyes immediately constricted and darkened. Acrelands whispered in her ear words that could easily be misunderstood by the listener in an extremely crude way. He recounted her drunken actions to her. She had actually waded out into the lake, muttering and cursing as she went. In the end, why did you do this to me? Can I even die as I wish? Why bring me back to the age of 23? In her pain, she tilted her head back and finished the bottle of wine in one go. A rather heavy one at that. Her cheeks were gradually flushing. She suddenly let out a curse. Fuck. If I don't wake you up myself like 14 years ago, will I be stuck here forever? She closed her eyes, tears slowly falling. For you, even if there was a decomposing corpse in the water, you wouldn't care, would you? With that, she actually sank herself deep to the bottom of the lake. That was all. Acreland said no more. He just silently listened to her short sighs. Good heavens, did I say that? I don't remember anything at all. Then suddenly, a painful memory from the past came back to her again. It was the moment the gift box with the black silk sash was brought to her from His Majesty the Emperor. The images of Acrelands from the past and present overlapped. It was terrifying. Hasolan clutched the thin blanket covering her and muttered, "Impossible. There's no way he would see me as a woman." As if to prove he could guess what she was thinking, Acrelands quickly spoke up. "Why are you so certain?" Hasolan thought hard. Only time has returned to 14 years ago. His nature hasn't changed at all. At this thought, she furrowed her brows, looking at him with a resentful gaze. Hasolan finally brought herself to speak to him as before. Hasolan answered his earlier question, because a noble black dragon who is about to become emperor would never act like that. "I'm changing, so could you please step outside?" Acreland seemed not to expect that the second thing she said to him would be this request. He was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Pardon my intrusion." Right after he left her room, Hasolan stood up. She sadly bowed her head. Tomorrow has really come. This isn't a nightmare or the afterlife, but truly 14 years ago. Suddenly, a light shone in from outside the window, dazzling her. Hasolan exclaimed in surprise, "The sun is rising." Hasolan exclaimed, "So beautiful." Thinking back, how long has it been since I've been able to watch the sunrise like this? So beautiful, this feeling. Truly, just having said that, her tears were already rolling down her cheeks. Hasolan said emotionally, "It's 14 years ago. This is the first time I've drunk myself into a stupor, and also the first time I've asked him to leave first, because until now, I only lived for him. I never lived for myself, not even once." She curled up, and even from behind, you could see how lonely her figure was. Hasolan suddenly stood up straight. "Although I accidentally woke him up again, thanks to that, I have a new chance at life. Although I don't know why this happened to me, or if there's some other intention, but..." Hasolan finished changing. She was truly determined that I end this life. I will live only for myself. To do that first, Hasolan went to Acrelands and told him, "I will inform the imperial palace that you have awakened." She spoke without raising her head, because she knew what she had to do. "I need to stay away from him. When I report to the imperial palace, the delegation to escort the next emperor will soon arrive here. Then I can naturally distance myself from him. A low-ranking official and manager of the Dragon's Abyss like me will never meet him, the next king of the country, again. That's a blessing." Hasolan closed her eyes tightly. She felt a sense of relief. At least avoiding him in this life would be easy. Suddenly, Acreland's voice cut through her thoughts. "No, don't report it." Hasolan was so shocked that her tightly shut eyes immediately flew open. Acrelands told her, "I will not go to the imperial capital, but will stay here with you." Hasolan's eyes widened as she stared at him, as if seeing something disgusting. Hasolin couldn't quite believe her ears. She thought in shock. Am I mistaken? Akerlans had stepped in front of Hasolin. Akerlans forced Hasolin to raise her head to look at him. He smiled smugly. Hasolin felt she couldn't move. Since a moment ago, the distance felt like it was closing. Akerlans lowered his eyes to look at her. Hasolin's eyes widened again, because at this moment, she was extremely astonished. What are you saying? How can you not go to the imperial capital? She turned her head to look in another direction, avoiding Akerland's gaze. You know the mandatory regulations. After that assertive statement from Hasolin, Akerland's eyes seemed to darken slightly. He, of course, was fully aware of this regulation. The Liabal Empire has had an unchangeable rule since its founding. Each generation has only one emperor, and that emperor must be a dragon who has a mate. Dragons who are not emperors must sleep in their own places to await their turn, even if it takes hundreds of years. Hasolin looked straight at his cold face. And now, it was Akerland's turn, but why did he want to stay here? She had no choice but to inform him before taking action. When a dragon awakens, it must be immediately reported to the imperial capital, and preparations to become the next emperor must begin according to the law. Akerlands immediately cut her off. It's not that I'm not going. Because I just woke up, I'll need some time to adjust. Hasolin told him, there aren't enough servants here, so it might be inconvenient for you. It would be better to go to a nearby territory. Before she could finish her sentence, she was stunned by Akerland's interjection. I only need you. You alone are enough. Hasolin frowned in annoyance as she looked up at him. She saw him smiling brightly. Akerland's coaxed her like an innocent child. So, can you postpone the report? Hasolin's heart trembled at his gentle, persuasive tone. Looking at him, I felt like I was back in the old days, back when Hasolin O'Day was still naive. Akerlands, although he didn't make me empress, he was the only one who allowed me to be by his side, even without acknowledging me as his mate. But sometimes he still acted very kindly, and it was those things that turned me into a fool. Hasolin disappointedly lowered her head to the ground. Why didn't I know back then? Akerlands subtly noticed this small change on Hasolin's face. He asked her, you don't look well. Are you still feeling nauseous? However, Hasolin did not answer him as he expected, because she was filled with hatred. That unpromised kindness was nothing but a torture of hope. She furrowed her brows as Akerland's kind advice still echoed in her ear. It's best you go rest today. After all, she only responded to that concern coldly and politely, thank you. As she walked away, she thought, as expected, he will become the poison that binds me. And yet, the very next day, the royal count and his entourage appeared at the dragon's abyss. He smiled and told Akerlands, Your Highness, we have come to escort you. Obviously, Akerlands did not expect to see them here so soon. He asked, slightly surprised what. The royal count bowed his head and spoke respectfully. Indeed, I am the royal count, here to take you to the imperial capital. And this is the emperor's personal cavalry. I rushed here after receiving the report that you had awakened. So please forgive me for not being able to prepare a private carriage for you. Akerlands truly couldn't believe that Hasolin could be so heartless towards him. He whipped around to look at her with angry eyes. I clearly told you to postpone the report. Even the horses brought by the royal count were frightened by his ice-cold tone. Hasolin quickly explained, reporting immediately to the imperial capital is a mandatory regulation. Akerland stared at her for a long time. His pained eyes said it all, that her heartlessness couldn't help but sting him. I asked that regulation more important than my words. However, after everything, Hasolin just bowed her head and said to him, I'm sorry. Akerlands felt extremely frustrated. It seemed he also didn't expect Hasolin to be so indifferent to him. The royal count saw the emperor's cavalrymen murmuring about the two of them. What is it? The atmosphere isn't very good, is it? This wasn't something outsiders should know. So, in the end, he had to speak up. Your Highness, I apologize for interrupting, but Akerlands turned his head to look at him. The royal count continued. We must depart immediately if we want to arrive on time. Hasolin bowed, respectfully telling Akerlands, I wish you a safe journey. Akerlands held his forehead, feeling a sense of loss as he watched her act this way. Do you think I will go alone? However, Hasolin quickly gave him an answer. A low-ranking person like me will be of no help to you. Akerlands was silent for a moment. Then he immediately asked her, what do you want? Hasolin clutched her left shoulder. She asked him back what I want. Before Hasolin could answer, Akerlands gently lifted her up into his arms, to her complete astonishment. Hasolin panicked. She wanted to say something, but heard Akerland's voice. Whatever it is, I will make it a reality. The two horses that were next to each other now had temporary masters. Akerlands looked at Hasolin and told her with certainty, "So, come with me." Hasolin gripped the horse's reins and frowned, asking him, "What are you doing?" He didn't answer her, but turned to the royal count and said, "The manager of the Dragon's Abyss will also come with me to the imperial capital." Of course, the count knew nothing of this decision by Akerlands. "What? But your highness, it's a day's journey to the imperial capital. The path is so treacherous that even the knights have to exert themselves. How can a woman possibly make it?" Hasolin quickly seized this opportunity to find a way out for herself. "That's right, let me stay here." However, no matter what, Akerlands would no longer listen to her opinion. He decisively shouted, "Depart." He quickly spurred his horse on, leaving the royal legion behind. "Hiya!" The royal count yelled at Akerlands. "Wait, your highness, you must go with us." Hasolin kept her horse still, watching his. Retreating back, everyone present heard the royal count's command. "Everyone, mount up. Quickly catch up to his highness." Hasolin was furious. She gripped the reins tightly, not letting go. "Even in this life, am I still entangled with that man?" Hasolin's expression was not good at all. It was dark and tinged with excessive resentment. She suddenly shouted, "Hiya!" Quick as lightning, her horse, despite starting last in the group, was now about to catch up with Akerlands. Seeing Hasolin right beside him, Akerlands grinned like a shameless rogue, teasing an innocent maiden. "Do you want to follow me?" Hasolin replied emotionlessly, "Since it is your command, I have no other choice. You said you would make what I want a reality, right? Please keep that promise." Akerlands replied magnanimously, "All right, I will make everything you want become a reality." In the end, unintentionally, I went with him to the imperial capital, and after a day of nonstop riding, we arrived at the capital of the Liabal Empire. The knights of the imperial army were panting, their speech broken that we've finally arrived. You rode that entire way without rest, and your expression hasn't changed at all, as expected of an emperor. However, Akerland's only concern was Hasolin. He looked around the crowd, but couldn't see her. "Why don't I see the manager of the Dragon's Abyss?" The royal count also seemed very tired after the long journey. He replied while catching his breath, "What? She was still here when you dismounted." Suddenly, at this moment, a figure with a special mission appeared. That person spoke, "Are you the dragon who will succeed me?" Akerlands immediately looked in that direction with a wary gaze. He quickly saw the reigning emperor, the white dragon Logela. Akerlands stepped forward to greet her properly, "Your Majesty." Logela smiled. Finally, she suddenly saw something in Akerlands that made her startle. Logela's face hardened, her eyes darkening. "Oh, that's it. This isn't the first time you've come here, could it be?" From within the crowd, Hasolin quietly observed everything. She heard Akerlands reply to Logela, "That's right. I turn back time and take back what belongs to me." Logela asked again in astonishment, "Turn back time?" Akerlands officially admitted it again. "That's right." Her eyes suddenly filled with indignation. "Are you in your right mind?" she questioned him. Her Majesty's fiery gaze was fixed on Akerlands as she berated him. "That power is forbidden, isn't it? Don't you know?" In the face of her anger, he replied calmly, "I know." Logela was speechless, and yet you still. The royal count, caught in the middle, was terrified and stammered, "Your Majesty, please calm down." Everyone was worried, the murmurs in the crowd growing louder. Did the ground just shake? What's happening? Her Majesty turned to leave, her eyes still fiery as she looked at him. "This is not a suitable place to talk. Inside. Let's go." Before entering, she cautiously reminded him, "When we are inside, you must explain your reasons clearly. There is something important to do before that." Before leaving, Akerlands reminded Royal Count. He respectfully awaited the order. "Yes, your highness." He instructed him, "Find a manager of the Dragon's Abyss in that crowd." Also, Hasolin also appeared in the crowd, her black cloak making her hard to see, but don't take your eyes off her for a second until I come back. "Royal Count, you manage the Dragon's Abyss, don't you?" The Count committed his highness's words to memory and nodded slightly, but inwardly he sighed softly. Why would his highness pay attention to such a low-level manager? He even placed a hand on the Count's shoulder with a stern gaze. "Remember this well. It terrified him. When I return, she must be here. His eyes looked coldly at the royal count as he assigned the task. Safely and completely at ease. Is that clear? The count panically agreed at once. Yes, I will bring her here safely. The reigning emperor, who was right beside them, softly mumbled 2 words, she. Her face could not hide her astonishment. The reason you broke the taboo is because of your mate? Emperor Logila was stunned. Could it be you've lost your mate? The emperor couldn't believe it. According to the customs here, the mandatory rule of the empire is that only dragons with mates can become emperor. So what is a mate? It is the moment a dragon chooses the one they love as their mate. The 2 beings begin to intertwine. The human will gain the lifespan and power of a dragon, while the dragon will have a short lifespan and emotions like a human. In other words, a mate is the only one a dragon loves and can be considered a dragon's only weakness. Inside the room, the emperor furiously shouted, "Unbelievable. You lost your mate and even turned back time." Faced with her anger, Akelins calmly followed behind. He even told her, "Calm down," but the fire of anger in Logila's heart could not be quelled. "Calm down, my foot." All joy collapsed in an instant. The reigning emperor was furious with Akelins. Everything has gone down the drain. I could finally pass on the throne. I came out to welcome you so happily. Yet my successor is like this. Emperor Logila held her head, reminiscing about old memories. Today, I miss my late empress again. Akelin said nothing. After a long moment, he finally replied, "You're not like a dragon at all, are you?" He pointed out a few strange details that only humans have. Your body is old and frail, and you're so emotional. The emperor sighed and explained, "That's because I merged with my mate and aged with them, as well as learned what are called human emotions." She turned back to ask him, "Surely you've experienced that too, haven't you?" The past emotions came flooding back when you acknowledge your mate and feel your mate's love for you. A bloody scene reappeared in his mind. "But you speak as if you know nothing at all." Akelin stood tall without answering. He just stood watching the emperor talking to herself. "There's no way it's like that. Without a mate, we are nothing but soulless corpses." He gave a slight smile. "Yes, I know that very well." She sighed and began to question him. "So, that manager from the Dragon's Abyss just now is your mate, isn't she?" The emperor questioned Akelins. "Why did you lose her? We must know the cause to prevent it in this life, right?" Akelins replied without hesitation, "It was my fault." The emperor was utterly stunned. He repeated it more clearly, for the emperor and for himself to see through. "The reason my mate died was because of me." Every time Akelins mentioned it, he felt a sharp pain in the left side of his chest. Outside, Hasolin was questioning the steward. "Why are you keeping me here?" The royal count, his face pale with fear, hurriedly explained, "Oh my, keeping you? Why would you say that?" He had prepared a thorough explanation. "You've had a long and arduous journey from the Dragon's Abyss. I just want you to rest for a moment in a room at the royal palace." But she became even more suspicious. How could a commoner like me dare to stay in the royal palace? Seeing Hasolin refuse further, the royal count grew more panicked. "If you find the royal palace too stressful, you can rest in the servants' dormitory." But she remained resolute and turned to leave. "I have escorted His Highness to the palace. According to procedure, I must return to the Dragon's Abyss." He sighed softly but ultimately couldn't say anything more, only muttering his thoughts. "She really doesn't give me any chance at all." The royal count observed her and silently assessed her. Initially, when His Highness said he would bring that manager from the Dragon's Abyss to the palace, I really didn't understand. But he had changed his mind since Solon was here. The more I look, the more I sense her noble aura and her proficient horse riding skills as well. It seems she's no ordinary woman. He held his head in distress, finally deciding to give in. "If you're going to be like this, then I'll tell you the truth. Actually, His Highness ordered me to keep you here." Her hand trembled slightly "Oh, please have a meal while you wait." The count pleaded with her, but Hasolin was still determined to leave and even announced some dreadful news: "I'm going to resign." The royal count was so shocked he felt his soul leave his body. "What? Resign?" Hasolin shared frankly with him. "I was planning to submit my resignation upon returning to the Dragon's Abyss, but perhaps now is the right time." As if nothing could hold her back, she hurriedly left the palace. "I have urgent business, so I must take my leave now." He shouted in panic, "No." The royal count rushed over as Hasolin insisted on leaving. Wait for me." She stopped abruptly as she ran into a man. Solon frowned and looked up. It was Akelins. His eyes, filled with sadness, looked at her. "Yes, that's so? You're going to resign?" His gaze on her was sorrowful, unwilling to let her go. But she paid it no mind, directly avoiding his eyes. The reason my mate died was because of me. Akelins recalled what he had confessed to the Emperor. She was utterly shocked, repeatedly questioning him. What did you say? He also recounted the past story. In the past, I was blinded by my own foolishness and didn't recognize or acknowledge the mate right in front of me. So I blindly burned everything down and turned back time to win her heart. Once again, Solin's words pulled him back to reality. Please allow me to resign, Your Highness. Solin had been watching Akelins the entire way. I imagined it the whole way to the imperial capital. The dragon lord has awakened and come to the royal palace. The sound of attendants gossiping as they ran to report. Quick, inform Her Majesty. But she only cared about one thing, imagining a picture of myself no longer living in his shadow. So she didn't notice the words he instructed the count about her. Prepare a room and food for her to rest. Solin had vague memories of the past. In the past, I held the position of Grand Duke and stayed in that beautiful Impel Palace. But those memories were not pleasant at all. Looking back, I only remember unpleasant memories. She looked at the scene before her and stepped back so as not to blend in. Perhaps this place is not for me. Until now, I still can't imagine life outside the royal palace without him by my side, but that Solin could gradually accept. She told herself, in this life, I will find the answer myself. Not a position by his side in appearance, but a place that can fully acknowledge me. Solin smiled, believing in a bright future. My true place. I have clearly made up my mind, she murmured. Finally, Solin cautiously repeated her request to him. Please allow me to resign, Your Highness. Akelin still looked at her with those sad eyes full of regret, but for some reason, she was visibly annoyed. He keeps trying to stop me. Akelins ultimately did not give Solin the answer she wanted, which also made Solin turn away in annoyance. Sensing the suffocating atmosphere and receiving a glance from him, the royal count hastily bowed. I will take my leave. Only then did he gather the courage to ask her, why are you resigning? What do you plan to do after you resign? Solin sighed, unable to understand what he was thinking. You've always asked that, haven't you? She also admitted frankly, I am incompetent, so being by your side is of no use. But Akelins held on tighter. You say it as if you can't be by my side if you're not useful, right? Solin laughed self-deprecatingly. Because the present and the past are the same. That's the truth. Akelins was stunned to hear these words. He clenched his fist, trying to suppress his anger. I have no intention of using you. I just want to make what you want a reality. Solin's eyes widened. Akelins became distressed, not wanting to lose her again. I'm sorry for making you feel that way. Solin froze. I was wrong. She couldn't believe what she was seeing and hearing right now. What are you doing? Apologizing? Apologizing to me? I dare not accept your apology. She replied, flustered. What is going on? Solin could hardly make sense of it. It's so strange for His Highness to apologize to someone as lowly as me. And isn't that reaction a bit excessive? The smile on her lips gradually stiffened. Something is strange. I understand Akelins better than anyone in this world. Solin was lost in her own thoughts that he is a man of principle to the core. Apart from the Emperor's work, he doesn't care about anything else. He is a man without a shred of emotion. But why? Gradually, Solin couldn't understand the reason. I won't go to the imperial capital. I'll stay here. At that time, Akelins had appeared and said those teasing words, just having you is enough. I will make your wish come true. Memories seemed to flood her brain, all memories between her and this strange man. And even now, Akelins was backing down just to apologize. I was wrong. Solin was bewildered. Has he ever said that in the past? Has he ever looked at me with that expression? She immediately voiced the suspicion in her heart. We've only known each other for 2 days. Your Highness hasn't done anything wrong to me, right? Or have we met before? As expected, Akelins was truly stunned when he heard her say that. Solin also noticed such a distinct change. Why didn't I think of it sooner? Since I turned back time, it's possible that Akelins also turned back time. Once again, unpleasant memories came flooding back like a stream. She clenched the hem of her clothes. If it really is him, she couldn't remain calm any longer. Then Solin questioned him. Can I never escape you forever? Escape from that miserable life? The painful memories of her that year were like a wound that could never heal forever. Solin lowered her head, her gaze on him no longer holding any reverence. Her vision suddenly became blurry. In fact, she could no longer hear Akelins' words clearly either. Everything became a buzzing and aching. Ha Solon groggily woke up, a voice ringing in her ears. If there's nothing wrong with her body, why isn't she waking up? The count reported clearly, it's likely due to accumulated fatigue, Your Majesty. She glanced towards the voice. Logila sighed softly. TSK, is Akelin still in that state? Where is this? She murmured. Moreover, this is clearly... The woman glanced over at the bed and quickly spoke up. Oh, you're awake? Seeing this, Hasolin awkwardly sat up and bowed respectfully to her. Greetings, Your Majesty the Emperor. In this situation, the Emperor was not formal, all right? Your body is still weak, so just lie down. Looking at the scene before her, Hasolin frowned and asked softly, why am I here? Her Majesty the Emperor sighed and replied, you fainted and were brought to the medical wing. Don't you remember you were unconscious for half a day? Hasolin held her aching head. I was unconscious for half a day. Now that she mentioned it, while talking to Akelins earlier, she suddenly felt it was hard to breathe. She suddenly remembered, her eyes growing more astonished. Have we met before? Solon hurriedly turned to ask Her Majesty the Emperor, Akelins, oh no, where is His Highness? Looking at her, the woman sighed softly. It seems you really don't remember anything. The reigning Emperor Logila said bluntly, Akelins is currently in isolation. He had seen the image of her collapsing before his eyes. Akelins froze. Did he let her slip away once again? Because he had lost consciousness. He couldn't be patient and transformed into a dragon, rushing to embrace her right in the palace, unable to control his draconic power. So to ensure the safety of the people, I have temporarily restrained him. She also felt heavy-hearted about it. That is something that has never happened in the past. Hasolin became even more certain of her assessment. If so, then Akelins really did turn back time like me. Her Majesty the Emperor also remembered the message she was entrusted with. Honestly, he asked me to pass a message to you. This is our first meeting. She put on a surprised look upon hearing that message relayed. The Emperor also didn't understand what these two meant and could only say the rest. He told me that if I said that, you would understand. Solon froze. Ha 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 ha, so that's how it is. The Emperor was also worried inwardly, even though I was asked to pass on the message. But what a relief, she replied softly. Akelins, who was under confinement, muttered to himself, I'm not sure if doing this is right. On the banquet table were all sorts of beautiful desserts. The reigning Emperor Logila was sitting and drinking tea. But she couldn't be happy, sinking deeper in her own thoughts. Especially the moment Akelins admitted, the reason my mate died was because of me, and then left her standing there, thunderstruck by this terrible information. After uttering those shocking words, he left. What followed were scenes the Emperor could never have expected. The entire palace was plunged into surrounding darkness. Lightning continuously struck down from the sky. Your Majesty, something terrible has happened. Outside, a group of attendants appeared here with her. Before her eyes was an unforgettable image. Akelins had turned into a dragon, holding Solon tightly within his embrace, tears streaming down in 2 lines. Open your eyes, Solon, I beg you. Those ice-cold tears streamed down her cheeks. He shouted madly, why do you keep dying? Do you hate me that much? Akelins asked frantically, but his heart was shattered and in agony, to the point of wanting to escape through death. But it's useless. Even if you choose death, I will turn back time again and again. He collapsed onto her and announced, to find you. A loud noise resounded violently. The Emperor was naturally furious. She also revealed her draconic power. This madman, how dare you, in the royal palace? Snap out of it, she yelled. Now was the time. The Emperor sat reflecting on the past events. TSK, the more she thought, the more she felt this future successor was unworthy, sighing and lamenting endlessly. How can he become the succeeding emperor? This also made Solon confused, Your Majesty. She sat opposite, having witnessed all of the woman's actions, and asked softly, did I do something wrong? Only then did Her Majesty the Emperor return to reality. She continued, it seems your mood is not. Very good. Is it because of me? Before Solon could finish, Emperor Logila stopped her. Haha, of course not. She sighed softly and observed her from head to toe. This child is the center of all events. Akelin's mate, Solon Adia. The Emperor also realized she was no ordinary person. Indeed, from her words to her social graces, are all perfect, but she grew more suspicious. Isn't it too perfect? Just a few hours ago, she fainted from mental shock, and right after waking up, she has a private meeting with the emperor. Even a seasoned noble would be shaken, yet this child is too calm. She considered another possibility. Was she born with a tough nature? Or, Emperor Logila continued to think, has she been through such horrific things that she's become accustomed to this situation? She also couldn't deny the guilt of the future heir. No matter what, Akelins was still the guilty one. In a bright afternoon, Her Majesty the Emperor rested her cheek on one hand, listening to Solin's story. Is that so? A few times, she added a question to show she was listening attentively. Right after being appointed at the Dragon's Abyss, you had to follow him to the royal palace. Her Majesty the Emperor heard the whole story from the mouth of the main character herself. Solin, maintaining the smile that had long since stiffened on her lips, replied softly, "Yes, Your Majesty." The woman nodded as if she understood, then changed the subject. "If you were just appointed, are you 24 or 25? She felt even more awkward. "I'm 23 years old." The more Solin thought, the stranger it seemed. Why is she asking about private matters? What kind of conversation is this? Suddenly having tea with the reigning emperor makes me feel a bit flustered. And she's not asking normal questions, but all things like a mother-in-law meeting her daughter-in-law. What do you like to eat? Where's your hometown? Do you want more cake? It left Ha Solin in a state of bewilderment. Those confusing questions are what truly make me confused. She even cared about her health. Do you faint often? Is your body still weak? The more Her Majesty cared for her, the more she had a different thought, letting her guard down a little towards her. At first, I thought those words had a different meaning, but maybe that's not it. Ha Solin clasped her hands together and slowly replied, "This is the first time I've fainted, on the contrary." The woman nodded inquiringly. "You must be exhausted after such a long journey." Because she had previously thought ill of Her Majesty, being cared for by her made her blush slightly and turn away. "It feels like Her Majesty is worried about me in a strange way. This is the first time I've been treated like this, so I don't know how to react." Emperor Logila even looked at her with an affectionate and loving gaze. The journey here was certainly not easy. She smiled affectionately at Ha Solin. "I am proud of you." Her face suddenly flushed red at being praised like this. Solin just stared at the reigning emperor before her, not knowing what to say. Suddenly, she flusteredly placed a hand on her left chest and bowed respectfully. "It is nothing. Your Majesty is too kind to a low-level manager like me." Her other hand clenched, even though she knew it was just a pleasantry. But looking at Her Majesty's warm smile, I feel very strange. The words Her Majesty said to her were like a comfort to a soul from that year. The journey here was certainly not easy. Those words felt like a consolation for a 37-year-old self. I don't know why I want to cry. Solin, lost in her emotions, smiled in return. "Thank you for your encouragement." Evening at the palace. The shackles inside the prison cell had been removed. Akelin stood up, rubbing his wrists. Only then did he turn to speak. "You unchained me faster than I expected." Her Majesty, she angrily muttered at Akelins. "Do you think I released you because you're handsome?" He didn't care and only asked about her. "Where's Solin? Is she still safe?" Emperor Logila nodded. "Your mate had tea with me and is resting in her room. Don't worry." "Thank you." He pinched his forehead and sighed in relief. At this moment, the reigning emperor sternly questioned him again. "Now, answer my question. Why did you hide from her that you turned back? Time?" The more furious Her Majesty got, the louder she became. "What are you planning to do, dragging me into your lies?" Akelins replied coolly, "I just want Solin." Her Majesty grew even angrier, her tone growing louder. "Then you shouldn't lie all the more. Aren't you deceiving your own mate?" Akelins rubbed his forehead and asked back, lying. His eyes suddenly blazed with anger. "As long as I can save Solin, that lie doesn't matter. Do you know?" The reigning emperor looked at the flickering light on the other side, waiting for his answer. "Solin ended her own life 4 times after I turned back time, and I had to witness all of it at the Dragon's Abyss." His face darkened further. "I don't want to see her die even one more time." He clenched his fist and continued. "So the only way is to start over. That is to return to our first meeting 14 years ago and win Solin's heart." The late-night moon was quiet. Solin tossed and turned in bed. "Ha," she mumbled, her face not showing a hint of happiness. "The pajamas are too soft. The bed is comfortable. Someone brings food right to the room." Ha Solin sat up, ruffling her hair in frustration, not used to her current situation. She mumbled to herself, "In my current circumstances, am I allowed to enjoy this luxury?" Solon recalled the afternoon. After having tea with the reigning emperor, I was arranged to stay in this magnificent room, personally designated by Her Majesty, which made her feel even more trapped. A negative mood enveloped the entire atmosphere. Now, sneaking away is no longer possible. Solon had a headache. It seems I've been bound to this place. She raised a hand, thinking things over. Then she mumbled self-reproachfully, things have really changed a lot. My private meeting with the reigning emperor and Aeklin's losing control. She walked to the windowsill and looked back as if gazing into the past are all things that never happened before. She looked at her dazed reflection in the glass pane and told herself, I have to sort things out. In the past, coming to the royal palace was a different picture. The image of Aeklin's immediately preparing to inherit the imperial throne. And Solon, who was also there. I learned support work so I could stay at the royal palace. At that time, the high-ranking nobles openly hated me. The whispers and gossip whenever Solon appeared grew louder, isolating her in the middle of the great hall. From then on, Solon had to tell herself that she had no choice but to prove she had value, without realizing it, that had corroded both her body and mind, turning her into a different person. After that, a civil war for the throne broke out, and then the palace was engulfed in flames. And only a dragon with a mate can become emperor. As such, she was immediately seen as a pawn on a chessboard of wits, and only when seen as part of the strategy for the throne was I allowed to be by his side. But the present is different. The situation now is that Aeklin's is imprisoned while I am welcomed. This was far different from any memory she had. Everything was strangely contrary to what happened in the past. It's like, she silently concluded, the chess pieces have gone beyond control. And Aeklin's too. Solon clutched her pajamas. Someone is determined to change the past. She pressed her lips together, lost in thought. Finally, she shouted and dismissed it. No, don't overthink it. Solon jumped onto the bed to rest and relax. He himself said it wasn't him. Maybe it's because I'm paying attention to Aeklin's that I feel so bothered. Besides, she looked up at the ceiling and mused again. He has no reason to do so. Solon's gaze grew even colder. I wasn't his mate from the beginning anyway. After saying that, she suddenly pursed her lips, finally letting go of the tangled thoughts running rampant in her brain. Annoying. A new day at the palace began. On the dining table was an array of delicious food. The first person to mention was the reigning emperor, Logila. Next to appear was Aeklin's, sitting calmly beside her. Solon found herself in an uncomfortable, tiring situation. This is so irritating. She couldn't touch anything on the dining table. Yesterday, her heart was in such turmoil she couldn't get a wink of sleep, and now she had to have breakfast with these two. Moreover, Solon glanced sideways at Aeklin's expression, yet he remained as calm as if nothing had happened. How can he maintain that calm expression? She placed her hand on the table and clenched it, asking herself, would I feel better if that face was also hurt? In the end, Solon pressed her lips together, unable to escape. I'm still dragged into this. Your Highness, after a long silence, she finally had to speak up before coming to the royal palace. You promised to grant any of my wishes, right? Now she brought up the pact between them again. That's right. The reigning Her Majesty, eating on the side, listened curiously to their conversation to in that case. Solon hesitantly proposed. Please allow me to resign. Aeklin's mood immediately turned gloomy again. She pleaded earnestly, I want to leave the royal palace. He didn't reply. It was the same question every time she wanted to leave him. You keep saying you want to leave, don't you? Solon nodded frankly. Because I want to leave here, she said respectfully to Aeklin's. I want to live true to myself, in a place where my abilities are needed. Is that so? Aeklin's nodded and asked further, is that what you truly want? All right, I agree. The reigning emperor's jaw nearly dropped when she heard that. What the hell is happening? As for Solon, she could finally smile confidently. In return, he proposed a condition. You must go with me. He stepped forward and looked straight into her eyes. What? Solon wasn't sure what scheme he was planning. Aeklin's began to play with her hair. Slowly, bit by bit, he spoke in her ear. You can leave the royal palace. But you are not allowed to leave me. Your Majesty the Emperor. Aeklin's turned to Logila. I will renounce the imperial throne. She was as if struck dumb. What? She was furious, loudly reprimanding. Renounce the imperial throne? What are you talking about? Currently, besides you, what other dragon can rule the empire? Aeklin's glanced sideways. We'll see. It's not certain. Solon was stunned to receive two pieces of bad news at the same time. The door to the room was pushed open directly. Urgent news, Your Majesty. The woman angrily scolded. What is it that you don't even knock? The attendant breathlessly announced, There's just been news that a dragon has awakened in the imperial capital. A shining golden dragon has appeared. The attendant continued, It is on its way here. Usman, the young golden dragon who has just awakened. Information about him has reached the royal palace. Beside Usman, there is no mate. Bessa Wilfred is always by his side like a shadow. He is a dragon's lair manager, but pretends to be the yellow dragon's master to control the yellow dragon at will. And in the end, he leads the yellow dragon down the path. A betrayal. The two join forces and advance to the imperial palace to oppose Emperor Akerlens. Inside the room, Hasolin looks through the glass door and thinks Usman must be on his way to the imperial palace, just like in the past. She remembers him, the young and enthusiastic Usman, along with the greedy Bessa Wilfred. When those two break the rules, the imperial palace will surely be in chaos. While Hasolin is lost in thought, Akerlens is behind her, playing with her silky hair. Solon is plotting her escape. So can I take advantage of the chaos to sneak away? The current emperor is trying to sway him. That young dragon cannot become emperor. You know that too. Akerlens retorts. So are you planning to put someone who broke a taboo like me on the dragon throne? No. Your Majesty has a headache. If he does that, you'll destroy the empire once again. If you do it once, you'll do it twice. But Your Majesty is silent for a moment, then continues, No matter where you are, you will eventually become emperor. She raises an eyebrow to remind Akerlens that young dragon will never leave someone who already has a mate like you alone. So can you refuse that position when a blade is at your throat and your mate's? Mentioning the one he loves, Akerlens becomes more agitated. I won't let him touch Solon. TSK, Your Majesty, hold her head, troubled. Why have two dragons awakened at the same time in my era? The more she thinks, the more she sees a difficult battle ahead. The yellow dragon doesn't know his place and harbors ambitions. So from now on, many things will happen. The current Emperor Logila proposes a perfect plan. You should quickly be recognized by your mate, then ascend the throne as emperor and make your mate the empress. Before leaving, you frown and remind him, don't make the same mistake as before. Leaving Akerlens alone in the hallway, deep in thought. Empress, he murmurs, the position of empress. Akerlens smiles foolishly. It was always meant to be hers. Solon. A stranger appears from behind a stone pillar. Solon. He slowly approaches Akerlens. Are you talking about the dragon's abyss manager? Ha, Solon. He frowns, wary of the person before him. Who are you? Ah. The man bows respectfully. I am Pukio, one of His Majesty the Emperor's loyal courtiers. He is also smooth-tongued, bowing his head in apology. My sincerest apologies for eavesdropping on your conversation. But what a relief. Mr. Pukio laughs fakely. His Majesty is very worried about choosing a successor, and yet you even mention the position of Empress. Pukio asks softly, so the Dragon's Abyss manager is indeed your Highness's mate, right? Akerlens turns away, uninterested. I have no intention of becoming emperor. If you're planning to pick a side, side with the yellow dragon. Impossible, he shouts. The yellow dragon doesn't have a mate. Come to think of it, Pukio looks at him with a sinister smile. The dragon with a mate is the legitimate successor of the empire. He recalls the past. In the past, he was also my subordinate. He had climbed to a rather important position. A piece of memory suddenly flashes back. At that time, he was respectfully reporting, Son of the Empire, I have urgent news for you. He announced with a sneer, I heard that Grand Duke Solaris is plotting treason. Ah, I remember. Aeklin's nods. Suddenly, he spits out a mouthful of fresh blood. Blood stains Aeklin's sharp hand. His face turns pale. He coughs and asks for the reason. Why would you? You're a good liar. He coldly stabs him through the heart again. Now his hand is stained with his blood. Dying later or dying now doesn't make much difference. Pukio's corpse lies on the ground. Blood stained his clothes. I knew he was lying back then too. I just chose to ignore it, thinking that even if I didn't interfere, Grand Duke Solaris, Hasolin Adia, would manage. I'm sorry, Solon. He murmurs in anguish. This time I intended to start over, but there are too many things standing in our way. A loud noise echoes from inside the room. Hasolin confronts him. Why did you kill Pukio? He casually reads a report and pretends not to know. Pukio, this is the first time I've heard that name. Solon gets angrier. Don't pretend you don't know. She slams her hand on his desk in anger. How can a high-ranking official just disappear without a trace overnight? At this, he gives a sinister smile. I thought I asked you to erase all the evidence, but Akelins praises Solon. The dragon's abyss manager is really sharp. She becomes more annoyed and shouts, even pointing out Pukio's advantages. He was the most important person your highness needed to ascend the throne. He frowns and asks back, Pukio? Akelins sighs softly. Let me tell you a secret. Let's see if he's really as good as you think. Solon is confused. This time she decides to ask directly instead of keeping it to herself. I don't understand why your highness did that. What are you thinking? Solon. Akelins gently calls her name. Solon is stunned again. The one who died said this. He steps forward and puts his hands on her shoulders. She also looks up to meet his eyes. Solon is my mate. So, Solon trembles slightly. The one with a mate like me will become the emperor. He slowly intertwines his hand with hers. A memory becomes clear in her mind. Solon, don't you want to become the empress? She looks at the person before her in astonishment. Could it be you? She gradually realizes the truth about him. Did you turn back our time? Don't you remember? Solon angrily gives him a slap. She shouts angrily. So you pretended not to remember to trick me. Akelin still looks at her with a loving gaze. I couldn't reveal it at that time. Because you look so tired, you fainted right before my eyes like this. Solon backs away in fear, avoiding his touch. I don't want to hear it. You're just going to use me again, aren't you? He doesn't force her, speaking gently. Solon, just do what you want. Akelins firmly grasps her wrist and softly declares, if you don't want to become the empress, I will give the throne to the yellow dragon. If you want to leave, I will write a resignation letter for you. This time, Akelins truly wants to make up for the past shortcomings for Solon alone. He even bows slightly to place a kiss on the back of her hand. Those who stand in your way, I will take care of them all. So could it be Mr. Pukio? Solon looks at the person in front of her with tears in her eyes, afraid. Akelins gently comforts her. Don't worry. I will handle all those who stand in our way. The palace doors slowly creak open. The yellow dragon Usman and Seiza enter one by one. The two of them bow before Logela. Greetings, Your Majesty the Empress. Usman gives a fake smile and says, It's a pleasure to meet you, sister. Logela replies to him, All right, so this time the yellow dragon Usman has awakened. Usman bows his head and answers without any humility, Yes, sister, I am the successor to your throne. Seeing his attitude, Logela remembers Akelins' advice. It's better not to place too much hope in him. Then she thinks, perhaps there's no need to change my assessment? They don't seem to be hiding anything. Rewind to 3 hours earlier, Logela and Akelins were chatting while playing chess. Logela scolds Akelins. Why did you commit murder right after returning to Impel? Despite this, Akelins appears very calm. You've already handled it smoothly. Hearing him say that, Logela frowns in annoyance and replies, Thanks to you, I'm wasting manpower. Uselessly. Then she looks up straight into his eyes and asks seriously, Did you really have to kill him? Akelins, while making his next move, replies, There was no reason not to kill him. I've killed once before, so killing a second time is no problem. Logela also makes a move in response and tells him, You're making me want to know what happens after I die. Hearing such a request, Akelins begins to tell her, This country is not ordinary. Even though I ravaged it for 2 or 3 years, it still didn't completely collapse. Logela is very confused by what he just said. She gets angry and shouts, What on earth are you planning to do? Akelins maintains his usual calm demeanor and replies softly, Let me tell you something. After you die, there will be a civil war. As if not believing what she just heard, Logela exclaims, What? Akelins continues the story while moving a chess piece. The young dragon from Censor doesn't like me, and I have no intention of giving in easily. Logela asks in surprise, even though you try to treat him well. Akelins immediately explains that because he is too naive and the Dragon's Lair manager is an evil man, what am I supposed to do when an ambitious man like him seduces a naive yellow dragon? Logela becomes tense and mutters, A civil war? Even though I knew there would be trouble, I never expected a civil war. What Akelins just said makes it impossible for her to remain calm. Logela tremblingly tries to make her next move. Logela tries to think of many ways. She says to him, "All right, let's say I don't appoint you as crown prince. Would that reduce the possibility of a civil war?" But she receives a blunt reply from Akelins. "Unfortunately, whether you appoint me as crown prince or not, a civil war is unavoidable." Logela props up her chin and speaks to him sternly. "To me, a peaceful succession is the most important thing because we exist for this country, and right now you are the direct line. This is your era." But these words don't move Akelins at all. He only cares about his mate. Akelins picks up a chess piece, looks at it, and replies, "My era? If my mate doesn't like it, what's the point of the throne?" Logela doesn't give up. She tries to persuade him. "If you ascend the throne and deal with the yellow dragon, how can your mate be persuaded?" Akelins doesn't let her finish. He makes the final move and tells her, "Just leave everything to me and go. Even if I don't become emperor, I can still do anything." Logela is truly at her wit's end with this stubborn person. She then asks him, "Can you keep this empire stable and prevent a civil war?" Akelins replies, "If the yellow dragon doesn't mess with me, I have no reason to aim for the throne." Logela looks at the fallen king piece on the board, muttering, "Why did they have to awaken that ambitious dragon? And you, why were you so foolish as to hurt your mate?" Hearing this, Akelin smiles and replies, "That's why I turned back time to change the past. What else? Unlike you, the yellow dragon is too stupid to realize anything." Logela asks him curiously, "You're very confident, aren't you? Because you know the future, you're not afraid of anything, right?" The current situation is truly making Logela extremely troubled. She clicks her tongue and thinks, "Should I put a mad dragon on the throne or a young, ambitious dragon? I must think carefully." The flashback ends, returning to the present. Logela bows her head and looks at Usman standing before her for a long time, then thinks to herself, if only the throne could be maintained by youthful impetuousness, that would be great. She also doesn't forget Seiza's presence. Moreover, that person is blinding Usman, so if the throne is passed to Usman, anyone can see what will become of this country. After a moment of thought, Logela has made a decision. She stands up and says to Akerlins beside her, "You said to leave it to you, so I have to trust you." Logela immediately announces solemnly, "I appoint the yellow dragon Usman as the crown prince of the empire." Usman shows no surprise. Instead, he smirks, "Ha, as expected." Fasolin, standing in the crowd, is extremely surprised to hear this news. What? Her Majesty is really putting a madman like that on the throne? Logela continues the appointment ceremony. She draws her sword and continues, I appoint the Black Dragon Akerlins as the border count of Rittingen. In addition, the border count of Rittingen will also hold the position of elector." This decision leaves both sides stunned and confused. Then Logela turns and leaves immediately. "I have nothing more to say. Everyone get out." Fasolin seems to have realized something at this moment. She exclaims, so that's it. Appointing Usman as crown prince was not an impulsive, thoughtless decision. How sharp. Usman is still overjoyed at having obtained this position so easily. He can't hide his elation. He keeps muttering, "Crown Prince, haha." But in reality, he doesn't know that the Empress has tied Usman's hands and feet. Rittingen is a vast and windy land in the north where foreign tribes frequently invade. The power of the border count who rules that region surpasses that of the dukes and marquises of the empire, who are directly under the emperor. The foolish yellow dragon will think Logela exiled Akerlins to a remote place. But in reality, the number of troops in the Rittingen fortress alone is 100,000. Once Akerlins commands them, it will be a threatening force too. All of Impel, Fasolin, on her way back, thinks dazedly. Besides, Rittingen has a port, so not only military power, but also capital and supplies are completely under control. She blurts out, perhaps Logela is supporting Akerlins? Then she continues to think the empire she worked so hard to build is in danger. So she certainly can't rest easy. I should also stay by Logela's side at this time. Usman and Seiza are also on their way back. Fasolin's actions inadvertently attract Usman's attention. He asks curiously, "Seiza, who was that woman in the audience chamber?" With just a glance, Seiza knew she is the Black Dragon's Abyss manager. Usman asks further, "A Dragon's Abyss manager. So is she like you, a Dragon's Lair manager?" Seiza replies, "You could say that, but I heard their relationship seems to be even deeper than that. Like a mate, for example." Hearing this, Usman can't help but fly into a rage. He yells in front of Seiza, "Don't lie, the black dragon has a mate? Calm down, your majesty, that's just speculation. But it's better for us to eliminate potential threats before they have a chance to grow." Hasolin quietly walks to the emperor's tomb. She bows her head, her hand tightly clutching a white chrysanthemum, silently passing through the crowd, also mourning the passing of the empress. Hasolin gently places the flower on her chest. Logela rests peacefully in a tomb filled with white chrysanthemums. Hasolin thinks dazedly, "Your Majesty." She closes her eyes and silently wishes her well. "May you be reunited with your mate." So many strange things have happened this year. A dragon who is not destined to become emperor is very ambitious and has awakened. And the dragon who has a mate did not inherit the throne. And the white dragon, the dragon who ruled the Impel Empire for 180 years, has passed away. But time flows on as usual, and the coronation of a new emperor has arrived. Akerlin still follows Solon around all day. He sees her reading something and asks curiously, "What are you looking at?" Hasolin maintains a cold attitude towards him. She leans back against the wall and asks, "Nothing. Anyway, will my resignation letter be approved soon?" Akerlin replies with a smile, "Oh my, it seems being busy with the funeral and the coronation made me forget about it. I will order them to approve it right after the coronation ceremony ends today." He even cheerfully suggests, "When we leave the palace, let's take a peaceful trip together around Impel and the neighboring cities." But Hasolin says, "Shouldn't you go to the Rüttingen region immediately as the new count, your highness?" Hasolin's eyes sadden. She speaks up and asks him, "Aren't you sad that your sister passed away?" Akerlin answers honestly. She lost her mate 7 years ago. She was simply living on in the shell of her former self to fulfill her duties as an empress. I'm fully aware that a dragon who loses their mate also completely loses the will to live, so I'm very happy for her. Then Akerlin takes the opportunity to move closer to Hasolin and says affectionately, "And that's why I came to you, Solon. Life is meaningless without you." Hasolin bluntly turns and walks away. She doesn't forget to tell him, "Just swear your oath of loyalty first, then go to Rüttingen immediately and become a shield against Sorik." Hearing this, Akerlin smiles and murmurs, "All right." Then he suddenly kneels right in front of her. Hasolin is surprised to see this. She shouts in alarm, "What are you doing? Please get up." But Akerlin insists, "You told me to swear an oath of loyalty." Then he swears an oath to her. "I, the black dragon Akerlin, swear to my mate Hasolin Adia that I will always love, cherish, and protect her for my entire life." But these words no longer move Hasolin. She doesn't feel even a slight flutter. Hasolin doesn't even look at him and turns to leave. "I don't need a vow you can't keep," although she says that Hasolin's mind is always pondering this. What if I were Akerlin and had a relationship like Logela and her mate? Would that change our lives? She tremblingly takes out the paper from her coat, thinking to herself, "What if? Please, there is no what if." Finally, she resolves to leave. Everything between us is over. The paper she is holding is her resignation letter. The Dragon's Abyss manager Hasolin Adia has been permitted to resign and leave the palace. Scene change. The day of the coronation has arrived. Everyone gathers to witness the new king's ascension. The count holds the edict in his hand and reads it aloud. "Are you ready to rule with rightful authority and bring prosperity to the empire?" Usman replies according to the ceremony, "I am ready." The royal count continues to read. "Will you listen to the words of your loyal mate and the advice from your subordinates?" Usman replies again, "Of course." "Will you do your utmost to protect and care for the people so that no one is left behind under your rule?" Usman answers, "I agree." Finally, after reading everything, Usman declares, "In the presence of everyone and with the utmost solemnity, I swear to fulfill everything." Then Usman is crowned with the prestigious crown, officially becoming the king of the empire. Everyone witnessing the scene cheers in celebration. Long live Emperor Usman for the eternal glory of the empire. Seiza stands beside him with a satisfied smile, having finally achieved her goal. Usman, holding the scepter, raises it high and shouts, "Glory to the empire!" Next is Akerlin. The new count of the Rüttingen region will swear allegiance to His Majesty the Emperor. Akerlin approaches coldly from a distance, thinking to himself, "He just needs to make me swear allegiance during the coronation." Although he feels annoyed, he still kneels to swear an oath before Usman. He wants everyone to see me kneeling before him. The royal count speaks up, "Please swear your allegiance, my lord." But suddenly Usman raises his hand to interrupt. "Wait." He suddenly sits down in front of Acre Lens and whispers, "First, I have a few things to ask you." Seiza, from a distance, is unable to stop Usman's sudden action. "Your Majesty." Usman leans close to Acre Lens and whispers, "I heard you have a mate. The Dragon's Abyss manager who resigned and left the palace today. Is she really your mate?" Acre Lens becomes truly enraged upon hearing this. He can't control himself and angrily grabs Usman's collar. Acre Lens growls at him. "Say again who left the palace today?" Usman is silenced by Acre Lens's killing intent. Seiza can only shake her head in exasperation at Yuman's foolish outburst. Damn it. By this time, Hasolan has left the palace and gone down to the town. She wanders around, looking, and thinks to herself, the streets are so vibrant thanks to Logela's excellent rule. I didn't expect to receive gemstones instead of cash for my severance pay. Exchanging these for money will probably be a hassle. How would I know when I never resigned in my past life? Acre Lens will surely look for me, so I must quickly exchange these gems for money and leave Impel as soon as possible. Hasolan goes to a jewelry store. She gently opens the door and asks, "Hello." The owner enthusiastically greets her, "Welcome." Hasolan gets straight to the point, "I want to sell some gemstones." The shop owner examines the jewelry and exclaims, "Oh my, such exquisite craftsmanship. Is this a gift for leaving service from the Imperial Palace?" However, the owner regrets to say, "But unfortunately, miss, our shop currently doesn't have enough cash to buy these gems." Hasolan is startled and asks, "What did you say?" The owner suggests, if the young lady doesn't mind, we can pay a deposit now and transfer the rest through the bank later for you. Hasolan thinks for a moment, well, this is bad. I don't have a single coin on me, and I need to pay for travel expenses. Suddenly a voice rings out, "Or you could sell it to me. I can pay you the full amount right now." A red-haired man walks in and says, to Hasolan, "Actually, I've been looking for gems like these for a long time." She looks at him for a long time and suddenly realizes, wait, I know this person. He is Turin McQueen, the fifth prince of Sorik. Sorik is a mysterious kingdom in the north, located near Rukningen. If Lupol is ruled by dragons, then Sorik is under the rule of tigers. The heir is chosen through brutal life and death battles among family siblings. In her previous life, Turin McQueen became the emperor of Sorik. He gives a faint smile and introduces himself. "A pleasure to meet you. Miss, I am Turin McQueen, the fifth son of Heninto, the emperor of Sorik." Hasolan smiles with her eyes crinkled and replies, "So you are a prince. It's a pleasure to meet you. Your Highness, I am Hasolan Adia." Then she can't help but be amazed and think to herself, I know many envoys from other countries were also invited to the coronation, but I never expected to meet him here. Is it just a coincidence? The jewelry shop owner suddenly speaks up, "I've seen this stone before. Aren't these gems used by the royal palace for severance costs? So this young lady must have worked there, right?" While holding the gemstone, Turin asks curiously, "What kind of work did you do at the royal palace?" Hasolan gives a faint smile and replies, "Just a lowly job that I'm quite embarrassed to mention." Hearing that, he laughs out loud and asks, "Oh my, I only asked because I saw you have some rather interesting companions. I didn't mean to pry at all." Peeking outside, she thinks in confusion, interesting companions? Are those what he calls interesting? They're the assassins who have been following me since I left the palace. I'm sure it was Bessa Wilfred who sent them to eliminate me. Now, they're waiting for the right moment to strike. Turin clutches the money pouch in his hand and offers with a faint smile, "If the young lady needs help, just tell me." Hasolan quickly snatches the money pouch from his hand and says coldly, "Thank you for your offer, but I'm afraid I must refuse." Then she continues her thought inwardly, "I'm sorry, Your Highness, but to me, a 300-year-old tiger is a more formidable threat than a few assassins." After thinking, she turns around and coldly says a farewell wish. "I hope you have a wonderful time here." Hearing that, Turin waves goodbye to her and says with a beaming smile, "Of course, see you again, miss." She doesn't reply and quickly walks away because she can feel that the group of masked people are still following her, which makes Hasolan extremely annoyed, thinking, how troublesome. I have to lose them. If they are simply waiting for an opportunity to kill me, they will probably show themselves when I go somewhere secluded. A moment later, as soon as they see her enter a rather deserted alley, one of the masked men immediately taunts, "How foolish. You've walked right into your own grave." Hasolan calmly turns to look at them and thinks with some surprise, only 3 of them, and they're just common thugs. The successor emperor seems a bit modest. Then she says indifferently, "You're clearly not strong enough to kill me." Hearing this, the masked men boil with anger and shout, "What? Your big talk won't save you. Shut up and die." Seeing them aggressively charging at her with knives, Hasolin not only feels no fear at all, but also calmly widens her eyes, which are gradually beginning to glow. Suddenly, it feels like something invisible is pressing down on them, so they immediately drop their weapons and kneel on the ground, bowing their heads and thinking, this terrifying pressure, what is it? I can't move. She calmly looks at them and thinks, power, a special energy used only by a dragon's mate. I try not to use it because I hate that I still have this power after reincarnating, but in the end, I still have to use it. Even so, I feel a bit strange using it again. After thinking, Hasolin walks over and sits down in front of them, then asks coldly, "Who sent you here? Was it the dragon's lair manager Bessa Wilfred? Or should I say Lord Kinna?" One of the masked men strains to lift his head and lets out a soft groan. Then he suddenly smirks and asks back, "You think I'll talk?" It turns out the reason he feels so confident is that there is still one member of the group she hasn't controlled, who is raising a sword high in his hand and preparing to ambush her. Sensing that something was wrong, she immediately turned her head to look behind her and was astonished, thinking to herself, "Damn it, I missed one." Just as she thought she was about to take the full force of this surprise attack, Akerlin suddenly appeared out of nowhere and gently swung his hand straight at the man's head, causing him to fall to the ground with a thud and meet his end. He slowly walked over to her and called out, "Hasolinadia." She broke out in a cold sweat and asked in shock, "Your Highness, what are you doing here? What about the coronation ceremony?" While using his power to restrain the masked men, he replied, "I don't think that's important right now." Seeing them screaming helplessly under the terrifying power weighing down on their bodies, unable to get up and attack her anymore. So he continued to walk forward and asked in a low, questioning voice, "Why didn't you tell me that you possessed that power? So you knew that you were my mate. So why did you pretend not to know?" Hasolin replied in a low voice, "I don't understand what you're talking about. I even had this power before you turned back time, but you still showed no interest in me." Hearing this, Akerlins fell silent and looked at her for a moment. Then he spoke, "You're right, I didn't care about you. Everything that happened in the past was my fault. So can I make up for the past by showing you my concern now?" Hasolin asked in surprise, "What?" Akerlins suddenly grabbed his own hair. Then he decisively cut it off with his sword, and then said, "Let's forget the terrible things of the past. We can start over from the beginning right here, right now." She didn't reply, stunned, thinking to herself, "Start over? You just want to forget everything. How can you say that so easily?" Then she clenched her trembling hand and declared loudly, "Listen here, I don't care if I'm your mate or not. I will never love you, never again." Akerlins was silent for a few seconds, then continued in a low voice, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry, Solon. But I can't give you up." Hasolin quickly closed her eyes and frowned in annoyance, thinking to herself, "Damn it, this is such a headache. How many more times do I have to repeat myself for this mad dragon to understand? I'll have to pretend to go along with him until I get a chance to escape." Seeing her slight hesitation, Akerlin smiled and suggested, "Let's go to Ruttingen together, my beloved mate." She didn't reply immediately, thinking with a sigh, he's still the same selfish dragon he's always been. At this moment, Akerlins's group had stopped at a cliff. Hasolin suddenly looked down from the cliff and thought with some astonishment, "This place is Ruttingen. In my past life, I only passed through during the Civil War. This is the first time I've really paid attention to this place." The young man in white suddenly shouted a reminder, "Hey, be careful." She couldn't help but think with a sigh, "This place is bigger and more lively than I thought. And it's cold." Suddenly, Akerlins took off his cloak and threw it over her, which made her wonder, and she quickly turned to ask, "What's this?" He explained with a faint smile, "I'm just hot." Hearing this, she stared at him for a moment, then thought disdainfully, "You mean a dragon can withstand the cold, is that it?" As soon as someone saw Akerlins arrive, they announced loudly, "The Count has arrived." The gate guards heard this and also quickly opened the gate, while the group of servants quickly ran out and stood aside to welcome him. Vitali, the manager of the Ruttingen residence, smiled and bowed in greeting. "Hello, Your Highness." Akerlins quickly dismounted and asked, "It seems a lot of work is waiting for me. Where are the things my sister sent?" He replied with a smile, It's all here. Hasolin curiously looked around and thought, the palace is magnificent, but not so old that it needs renovation. Maybe I can find a job here. While she was lost in thought, he suddenly reached out and touched her shoulder, making her jump. Witnessing his considerate act of lifting her off the horse, everyone present froze and stared in astonishment. Vitali and the guard next to him saw this and exclaimed in alarm in unison, "Your Highness!" Hasolin couldn't help but panic and think with a sigh, "Oh God, is he having an episode?" Everyone is watching. Then her face turned pale as she requested, "Please put me down now." He immediately refused. "No, you must be tired after a long 10-day journey, so you should take care of your health." She didn't reply, but covered her face with her hands in embarrassment. While carrying her, he asked, "Where's my bedroom?" Vitali replied, "This way, sir." A moment later, in Akerlenz's room, seeing him suddenly wanting to help her wash her feet, made Hasolin ask in disbelief, "Do we really have to do this, Your Highness?" He calmly explained, "You don't look like you have a cold, but it's better to be careful." Hearing this, she trembled with anger and gritted her teeth as she continued, "That's not what I meant. Everyone is watching." He asked in confusion, "So what?" She replied angrily in a loud voice, "So they're thinking, what the hell are you doing? Usman becomes emperor, and another dragon is here washing a woman's feet. People will think I'm your mistress. You know." Having said that, Hasolin bowed her head and clenched her teeth, unable to help but feel frustrated. "Do you know how hard I worked in my past life to maintain your image? Power, fame, integrity. I worked my fingers to the bone to make sure you had those things, so that you could become a perfect emperor, and you once again humiliate me with that careless attitude." Akerlenz suddenly asked, "I don't understand. Are other people's thoughts that important?" Hasolin asserted loudly, "Of course, it's very important, more important than my life." Hearing this, he bowed his head and continued with a smirk, "All right, then let's get married." She broke out in a sweat and asked in astonishment, "What?" He calmly explained, "You don't want to be mistaken for a mistress, right? If we get married, it won't be like that anymore. Who would care about a husband helping his wife wash her feet? So marry me." She quickly pulled her foot out of his hand and questioned loudly, "Are you crazy? Are you talking about marriage? The coronation ceremony just took place a few days ago. You know." He calmly ran his hand through his hair and asked nonchalantly, "What's so strange about a dragon marrying his mate?" Hearing this, her face immediately turned pale and she questioned in a panic, "Doing that means declaring war on the throne. Do you want to declare war on the capital? Not to mention, you don't even need a mate." Hearing this, Akerlenz called out, "Solon." Then he slowly stood up and blamed himself in a low voice. "If that were true, I wouldn't have turned back time. I truly love you." Hasolin turned her head to look in another direction and asserted coldly, "No, you can't. You don't know anything about love." Akerlenz quickly asked, "You think I don't love you?" She replied, "That's right." He continued calmly, "Then if I say I want to break your ankles, tie you up so no one can see you, and make love to you until day or night no longer matters to me, what would you call that feeling?" She angrily kicked him straight in the face with her foot and replied loudly, "Perversion and deviant lust." He repeated with a smirk, "Lust? Yes, you can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter what this feeling is called, right?" She gave him a sidelong glance and cursed angrily. "You lunatic," he continued with a faint smile. "The most important thing is still you and me, now that we are together." Hasolin didn't answer but frowned and thought with a sigh, "He disgusts me." That afternoon, in a certain corridor of the royal count's residence, he was now standing looking out the window and recalling what Akerlenz had said to him. "In Rutingen, it will be more difficult than in the capital, but at least there will be peace. Surely everyone will be heartbroken to see someone like you struggle against a predetermined end. Remember that my arms are always open for you." Then he sighed and thought to himself, "Maybe I should follow him, but it's still too early to judge Emperor Usman's abilities." Just then, a few servants suddenly started whispering among themselves, "I heard that before, only wise dragons were qualified to become emperor. But the current emperor has not yet reached that standard, perhaps because he has only just ascended the throne. Remember that chaotic coronation ceremony? Honestly, it seems the Count of Rutingen hasn't even sworn allegiance, so it's going to be difficult for Emperor Usman." The moment the Count grabbed the Emperor's clothes and threw him in the middle of the ceremony, I still remember it. Haha, that's right. It was a remarkable sight. Akerlenz suddenly approached and said, "It seems there are still many who don't know how to control their mouths, huh? Good afternoon, Lord Sumar." Seeing him, he said, Lord Kinna, he continued with a faint smile. Don't mind them. Flies will always be flies. He couldn't help but ask, do you need something from me? Akerlens continued calmly. Oh, it's nothing big. I just wanted to inform you that our sister, the one you personally crowned, wants your loyalty. He stared at him in silence and thought doubtfully. Is this a warning? He continued nonchalantly. I hope you will meet Her Majesty's expectations. Majesty. He continued to remain silent and thought in confusion. What is happening in this country? Two servants were whispering. Remember the girl who managed the dragon's abyss who came here 2 days ago? She hasn't left her room once. What? She's still in His Highness's room. Is she? They couldn't believe this was real. That's right. Could she be His Highness's mate? Impossible. If that's the case, how could the golden dragon become emperor? Could he? Hasolan looked out the window and said earnestly, please let me out. Akerlens, holding a cup of tea, said cunningly, it's cold outside. What if you catch a cold? Hearing that, she turned and said coldly, you don't need to worry about that. He replied to her, I won't touch you, so stay here until I'm done with my work. She looked at him and said, when will that be? He looked at her with half an eye, holding a cup of tea, and said dangerously, when all threats to you are eliminated. She looked at him and said coldly, just say that I'll never get out of here. I have the right to go where I want. She asked a question. If I go on a hunger strike, will you let me go? Akerlens put down his teacup and said, you could try if you want to see my face at every meal. She clenched her hand into a fist. All right. Hasolan propped her hand up and said, then let's make a deal. If you grant my request, I will also grant you a request in the future. He asked, any request? She looked at him with a determined gaze. Yes, any request. He quickly stood up. Fine, you could take a walk outside. Is that enough? She propped her hand up and said, don't go back on your word. She smiled slyly. You foolish dragon. Do you really believe I'll keep my word? I haven't even sworn an oath. I had no intention of granting you anything. Inside the tall, classic buildings, there was the sound of footsteps on the brick floor. Hasolan walked reluctantly. She said uncomfortably, you didn't say you would come with me. Well, I didn't say I wouldn't come with you. He looked at her back in front of him and said, have you still not forgotten what happened in the capital? Lismon is trying to kill you. She said without concern, if you'd let me go then, Lismon would have no reason to kill me. The carriage stopped right next to where the two of them were standing. He approached her and put his arm around her shoulder as a reminder, watch out for the carriage. She saw the carriage in front and also said, I know. Suddenly Hasolan was startled. There was a familiar voice. Well, what a coincidence. Turin, with his face peeking through the window, he said, isn't this the Count of Rudingen? Are you two taking a walk? She quickly hid behind him, covering her face. Turin Markeen, Akelins replied nonchalantly. Aren't you on your way back to Sorik? Turin, still sitting in the carriage, said, indeed, although unfortunately I missed the grand coronation that everyone is talking about. She asked him, Grand? Your Highness, what did you do to the golden dragon? He replied angrily, you and I have never met, but you seem overly friendly. Tell me, are you a tiger or a dog? Turin laughed and said, ha ha, although this is only our first meeting. Then he looked at the person behind him and said suggestively, but it's not the first time for Hasolan. He saw Turin mention her name. Hasolan, what wind blew you here? Turin said, Hasolan, do you work at the Rudingen residence? She pretended to cough and said, ahem, Prince Turin, it's a pleasure to meet you here. In her heart, she reminded him, don't act like we're close. He turned to ask her, when and where did you two meet? She replied, we met by chance at a jewelry store on the day of the coronation. Turin touched the ring on his index finger and said, I was very impressed with the severance pay and loophole, although I'm not sure why she quit. He added, as a dragon's mate, it's very normal for her to desire the position of empress. Both of them froze. Turin said, anyway, I'm just an outsider. I have no right to comment on the events and loophole. It's just that two awakened dragons in the same generation is truly surprising. He also added, well, your emperor has given me many gifts, but my horses are all exhausted. We can't cross the border in a day right now. He smiled dangerously and said, His Highness said, the Count will be willing to assist. Since it's an imperial order, I can't refuse, so I'll have to stay overnight at the residence. Akelins replied, thank you very much. Turin in the carriage smiled friendly and replied, I hope we can meet more often. Everyone wants our two empires to be on good terms. Right? He said, the Sorik border is prepared. She quickly covered his mouth with her hand. Haha, that's right, of course. Turin said, that's all. I won't disturb your date anymore. He said goodbye. See you at the residence. When Turin left, she sighed. Ha, what a disaster. I thought I could find a chance to separate from Akelins and escape, but I ran into that Tiger Clan member. Ha, Solon wondered. But even if it's an imperial order, letting the enemy's prince into your own residence? Lismon must be out of his mind. She continued to think. Tyrant must be probing Rudingen, and Lismon is letting him do it. He said beside her, mate date. He repeated. Solon didn't deny it. She continued to think. That's right. I also have to make an announcement. Seeing the person beside her muttering, she asked, what nonsense are you talking about? He said, I want everyone to know that you are my mate, Solon. She was startled. What? Solon couldn't believe it. Vitali and the servants welcomed her very warmly. We have prepared a fine bed and pillows for you, my lady. Please let me know what time you need breakfast tomorrow. Oh, that's right. Your personal guard will be here soon. She held her head and sighed, saying, but I don't need those things. They were startled. What do you mean? Vitali said cheerfully. Of course you do. You are His Highness's mate. She thought gloomily. Ha, in less than a day, everyone already sees me as his mate. Aeklund's mate? Ha, Solon. Oh, damn. In my past life, I really wanted that title. She thought. For love? No, it's more accurate to say I was seeking recognition. How can I gain everyone's recognition when even one person doesn't recognize me? His Highness's mate. You are his mate. You are his mate. You must, my mate. These things are meaningless. Maurice entered and said seriously, good day, my lady. I am your guard, Maurice Gizmon, Solon's guard. She also replied cheerfully, a pleasure to meet you, Sir Maurice. He said, it's a pleasure to serve you. Solon thought, did Aeklund ask him to watch me? It's hard to be free with him hanging around. She still said cheerfully, it's a pity, but I don't need a guard. He said, obviously you do. Maurice sighed and said, Rudingen is often invaded from the outside. You must be His Highness's mate, right? She wondered. Oh, suddenly there was a noise outside, and both of them paid attention. He said loudly, intruder. She panicked, intruder. At this time? Right after the Prince of Sorek just left this morning. He said, we must go to a safe place. Now, my lady, she remembered a detestable person. Tyrant, that cunning Nimitar clan has attacked the city. They said, just as the prince said, this part of the wall is the weak point. The gifts the emperor gave are all in there, right? The people in the city were scared. The city wall is collapsing. Ah, there. Maurice said, my lady. She replied, let's go. There was a scream. Hey, help. The person chasing that young man was shot dead. Ack. She turned back and said loudly, what are you standing there for? Evacuate all the servants. That person said fearfully, huh? Oh, yes. She thought, damn it. So I'll never work for Aeklund again. Behind her, there was a voice. Kill. Solon glanced with a sharp look. The person behind was quickly taken down. Ack. She ordered, guards, evacuate the women and children first. Knights, get in position and follow me. Maurice reminded everyone, follow her. She thought, I should have taken this opportunity to run, but my body reacted out of habit. Habit. She was angry. Whatever happens to that mad dragon has nothing to do with me. But the innocent people being dragged into this are in danger. I'll just help him this one time. Outside, the battle was fierce. Vitali asked, Your Highness, how are you? He replied, Don't come here. Go protect the people. But he turned to face the three men in front and said, Protecting Loophole is a mission tied to the soul of every dragon. Clan member. He moved forward to fight fiercely. Even in my past life, I couldn't deny that mission. He wondered, Where is Solon? Tell me she's safe. The man beside him said, Actually, Vitali held his neck and said, The lady is commanding the army. He was surprised and couldn't believe it. He continued to fight, thinking to himself, Solon will be fine. She's been doing that for 14 years. This time, too, from the time I ascended the throne and began to expand the borders for 14 years, defeating enemies, implementing policies for the people even if it went against the nobility, supervising internal affairs for me. Everything naturally fell into Solaris's hands. No, in fact, they didn't come naturally. She's not a dragon. She doesn't carry the mission to protect Leopold. She could turn her back and run at any time. So why? Duchess Solaris will be fine. Did I think that way back then? He looked ahead at her drawing her bow and thought, I really don't understand anything about you. He felt guilty. My short-sightedness killed you. He looked at her and made a resolution, but I will not repeat my mistake. He walked towards her and called, Solon. She turned her head and replied, Your Highness. He said, I'm here. You don't need to command anymore. She replied, But the battle isn't over yet. Sola looked at him coldly and said, I was familiar with the battlefield before anyway. Don't stop me. He insisted, This place is very dangerous. I can't lose you again. You said you didn't want to work for me anymore. She clenched the bow in her hand. You're right. She strongly drew the bow and said decisively, But this time, I fight because I choose to. She said, "You may have given me a second life, but this is still my life." He looked at her and asked, "Even if this is my request?" The enemy behind him was shot dead by her ugh. She looked at him with a mocking smile. "You've been an emperor once. You should know better than anyone that a verbal agreement can't be trusted." If that foolish golden dragon saw this, he would burst out laughing. She turned away and said, "We don't have time for meaningless comparisons. Let's stay vigilant until the attack is over." He clenched his fist, sullen. He looked at her back and wondered, was her back like this before? Confident, unwavering, even though the burden on her shoulders was not meant for her to bear. How would I know? She was always the one following me. He made a resolution and said, "Then, this time I will always be behind you, as you once did for me, until one day you are willing to turn back and look at me." After the Nemental clan retreated, temporary peace was restored in Rootinger. People passed the word. The Count led the people in his territory with excellent leadership. Under his direction, everyone worked together to clean up the ruins left by the war. Aislinn sat working and said, "Quickly fix all the loopholes that were exposed through this incident. At the same time, have the ports and trade routes checked again, then bring me all the relevant records." Vitali asked worriedly, "Your Highness, you already have so much to worry about with the reconstruction. Are you really going to review all those documents as well?" He didn't react and just replied, "We have inflicted heavy losses on the enemy, so it will be some time before they can resume the war. But just because we have more time doesn't mean we can let our guard down." He gave further instructions. "We need to check the facilities and train the knights, and we must also ensure the safety of the trade routes. There's still a lot to do." He replied, "I will try, sir." He put down the reports. He looked up at him and said seriously, "Don't just try, get it done." He bowed his head and replied, "Yes, Your Highness." At this time in her room, she was enjoying tea. Sola looked out the window. "So the repair work on the main castle has officially begun. This place will be quite busy for a long time." While enjoying her tea, she thought, "Am I the only one who's free?" She looked around and replied, "That's right. I'd rather die than help that Aislinn, but now I want to do something." 2. She snuck out of the castle. Luckily, Morris is busy with the castle repairs, so it was easy for me to sneak out. Looking at the people lining up, she thought, security checks are being tightened along with the repair of the city walls, so I can't go out as usual. The people were talking. "Have you heard? The Count's mate played an important role in the recent war." The woman heard this and said, "Oh, that's right. I heard she's a very good archer." People were talking to each other. "Hey, the new emperor in Impel doesn't have a mate, right? So isn't our Count the one who deserves to be emperor?" They all exclaimed, "Indeed." Hearing this, she thought to herself, "Our Count is the worthy choice, our Count." I guess the scene of Aislinn protecting the castle left a big impression on the people of Rootinger. Usman must be very jealous. They added more, which made her collapse. There's a rumor that the emperor is about to issue a decree to find a mate. What, can he really find a mate this way? Solon turned and wondered, did I hear that right? A decree to find a mate. Has that Usman lost his mind? She just found it so funny. Suddenly a voice came out. A mate is not something that can be easily found. He opened his cloak and smiled, right? She saw a familiar face. Turin Marquin. She stood with her arms crossed and questioned, "What is a tattletale like you doing in rooting?" Tattletale? He found it ridiculous. Haha, that word is a bit grand for me. Turin crossed his arms and said, "Besides, wasn't it Rootinger that made itself a tasty morsel from the beginning? With or without me, this war was only a matter of time." She said bluntly, "You think I believe that? I've seen through your true face." He asked her back, "So what did you see? Am I thinking that Rootinger needs to be prepared for destruction to pave the way for the conquest of Impel?" Hearing that, she replied, "So you deny it?" He said, "I think this is a bit more complicated." She crossed her arms with an indifferent attitude and asked, "So what does that have to do with you coming to see me 3 different times?" Turin said, "The Emperor of Sorok will soon pass away, and I intend to inherit the throne." He stood opposite her and spoke of his ambition. "Therefore, Hasolanadia, Maid of the Black Dragon, I want to ask for your help." She was surprised me. He said, "I want to build a good relationship with Leopold, and to do that, we need to eliminate all animosity between our 2 countries." He asked, who could be more suitable for the role of a mediator other than the dragon's mate? She laughed and asked back, "Aha, so what is your meaning, sir?" He confessed to Solon, "I admit that from the beginning I knew who you were." He had previously made a gesture to approach her. "If the lady needs help, just say so." He stated his purpose. Initially, I just wanted you to have feelings for me. I hope you will have a wonderful time here. She had replied earlier. Tyrant thought, I never expected that she was trying to escape from that dragon, but I think this is a godsend opportunity. She said coldly, so you plan to kidnap me while everyone was fighting with Nemental? He laughed and explained, oh my, you found out. I must admit that Sorik's methods are a bit brutal. His eyes sharpened as he proposed. But if you agree to help me, I guarantee that you will escape the clutches of that black dragon once and for all. He turned, waved goodbye, and said, I will have a ship ready for you at the port tonight. I hope you will make the right decision. She thought, escape by ship? Solon felt, it's not a bad idea. She thought, although I'm not sure if I can completely escape the sight of that mad dragon. Perhaps this is the time when security is at its most lax. Solon felt, moreover, if I continue to stay here. She thought of her former self. I will never escape the shadow of the past. Tyrant called his attendant, Boris. Boris asked, how was the conversation with the lady, Your Highness? Tyrant's subordinate, Boris. Tyrant took off his hat and said, I didn't have much to discuss with her, so I'm not sure if she will change her mind. Boris asked, confused, are you really planning to marry the dragon's mate? In reality, isn't that a forced marriage? He smiled sinisterly and said, even without the dragon's mate, you would still become the succeeding emperor of Sorik. He looked fearsome and asked Boris, where's your Sorukan spirit? Boris, we are Sorukans. We will take everything we want. If I can steal the mate of that black dragon, I can shake the Piu Empire to its very roots. Even a dragon as powerful as him wouldn't dare to lay a hand on his own mate. And that new emperor still has no power in his hands. A small crack can create a large divide. He clenched his fist and said coldly, in the end, Sorik will take over Piu. At the port, Solon was hiding in a hidden corner. Solon hugged herself, feeling the cold. Rooting her was already very cold, but the night at the port was even colder. She thought, I've escaped from the castle, but I don't think I'll be so lucky again. Solon felt, if I miss this chance, I will have to say goodbye to escaping by ship. She looked at the ship ahead. Is that the ship Tyrant prepared? She felt hesitant, but the problem is Tyrant Marquin. She called out to the person in front. Hey, she said, I want to board the ship. Anywhere is fine as long as it's not Solik. Unfortunately for you, I can't trust the people of Solik. How can I trust them when I am from Loophole? Just do it to deceive Akerlens. Tyrant was right, but he predicted she wouldn't board the ship. The ship floated on the sea. Sitting inside the boat's cabin, Solon sat huddled in a corner in fear, thinking, it's been about 30 minutes since we departed. I can't wait to escape Rithingen. The ship to Solik didn't leave the port because I didn't get on it, but the fact that there's no sign from Akerlens makes me a little worried. Interrupting her train of thought, two men standing nearby suddenly said loudly, Huh, what is this? Damn it, what are those guys doing here? Someone shouted in terror. It's pirates. Look at the symbol. A lake. Did those Sorukan guys come all this way just to rob our ship? Tyrant stood next to Boris, smiled and said, she should have just stepped onto the ship. Now I have to force her. Seeing who had arrived, Solon frowned worriedly and thought, Tyrant Marquin, damn it, I thought everything would go smoothly. At that moment, a storm suddenly brewed in the sky. Lightning continuously struck the sea surface, and strong winds made the boat unsteady. Everyone on the boat quickly announced, a storm is coming. Damn it, why is everything going so wrong? Lower the sails before they get torn apart by the storm. Seeing this scene, Tyrant knew that Akerlens was coming. He clicked his tongue in frustration and said, he arrived earlier than I thought. Boris looked at him worriedly and said, I told you this was a reckless plan, Your Highness. Standing in the rain, Solon guessed in panic. This storm could it be? Before she could finish her sentence, amidst the dense lightning in the sky, a black dragon was rapidly flying over. Seeing this, everyone on the ship screamed in fear. It's a dragon. Lightning quickly struck the people on the boat. Everyone panicked and screamed. The ship is capsizing. Boris frowned at Tyrant and said urgently, Your Highness, I beg you. Tyrant replied thoughtfully, I know. At that moment, the black dragon suddenly landed on the boat, transforming into a person amidst the dazzling lightning flashes. It was none other than Akerlens. His face darkened as he called out coldly, Solon Adia. Akerlens continued to threaten angrily, come out. Seeing that it was him, everyone on the boat, though not understanding, tried to force a smile and said, thank you, Your Highness, Your Highness. Pausing for a moment, he continued, "Did he deal with the pirates for us?" Another person asked, confused, but isn't Hasolan His Highness's mate? At that moment, Hasolan was standing in front of Akerlins, looking at her with a frown. He paid no mind and just said coldly, "Was it Turin Marquin who lured you? What did he promise you?" He approached her, and as he walked, he said, "A better life. Freedom with a position of empress." Not answering the question, Hasolan just looked at him desperately and said, "Please let me go, Akerlins." Not letting her continue, Akerlins stepped forward, lifted her up, and carried her away. In the hallway of the castle, her screams echoed, "Let me go." Akerlins did not reply. He threw her forcefully onto the bed. Hasolan cried out in pain. Only then did Akerlins speak. "I told you." He lost his composure and shouted at her, "You can leave the castle, but you cannot leave me." Hasolan couldn't contain her anger and yelled, "Who do you think you are to forbid me?" Akerlins looked at her in disbelief. He replied coldly, "You are my mate." Then he raised his hand to gently squeeze her neck, threatening, "Even in death, you cannot escape my grasp." Hasolan, furious, pushed him away forcefully and said loudly, "I am your mate? Don't be ridiculous. You were the one who denied it." Seeing her so agitated, Akerlins wanted to touch her face to comfort her, calling, "Hasolan." Not giving him a chance, Hasolan slapped his hand away and yelled, "Get your hands off me." Looking at her like that, he said coldly, "If I cut your tendons, will you stop trying to run away from me?" She shouted angrily, "Don't touch me." As if not hearing her words, he just stared at her and said to himself, "But it will be very painful for you. Fine, have it your way." Akerlins took her hand, smiled, and said, "Run far away, then leave me, fool around with other men. I don't care." Then he bit her hand hard and said gently, "Because every time I will remind you who you belong to. The only reason I am still here, despite having to endure the insolence of that insolent golden dragon and that arrogant tiger, is because of you." He let go of her hand and gently inquired, "You said you don't want to be the empress, or do you want me to grant you that title tomorrow morning?" Hasolan frowned in annoyance and replied, "You want to become a great emperor, and I am your most useful subordinate. That's the reason why." Akerlin shouted, cutting her off, "Don't deceive yourself when you know my feelings so well." Hasolan said helplessly, "Oh, I see. Now you just want a woman to warm your bed every night, right?" Akerlins rested his head on her lap and said in anguish, "I yearn for you, but I cannot force you." Hasolan just replied faintly, "Isn't this forcing me? The way you are behaving, I truly hate you." Suddenly Akerlins shot up, pushed her down, and bit her neck hard, making it bleed. He whispered softly in her ear, "Keep provoking me, Solon." He lifted his head, looked straight into her eyes, smiled, and continued, "You could deny me as many times as you like, but the marks I leave will remain on your body. And each time, I will leave another, deeper mark inside you." At the imperial palace, Usman's gentle voice was heard, "Bess, no, Lord Kinna, will I really find a mate this way?" Kinna bowed respectfully and replied, "Of course, your majesty." Usman frowned and said, "But the others keep talking about history and all, and about the previous emperors." Kinna smiled lightly and said, "Please don't mind them, your majesty. There's a record from a few centuries ago about a dragon who, after awakening, chose his own mate, even though he had none before." Usman asked in disbelief, "What? Did such a dragon really exist?" Kinna replied gently, "Yes, that dragon is not a stranger. It is the black dragon Akerlins." At Akerlins' residence, Hasolan was lying on the bed, happily reading a book. He opened the door and entered, covered in blood, smiling and saying, "You're awake, Solon." Glancing at him, she said faintly, "I heard that after that day, you couldn't control your anger, so you crossed the border yourself to destroy the invaders. It must be true, right? Why didn't you just die there with them for locking me up here?" Walking towards her, he asked, "Are you disappointed that I survived and returned?" Hasolan sat up and replied, "That's right, because I prayed for your death." Ignoring her provocation, Akerlins just smiled and said, "Have you thought about my proposal, or if you don't want to go anymore, then you can just stay here." Then he continued cheerfully, "And I hope our wedding will be held in the spring." Before he could finish, she threw a paper at his face, cutting him off coldly. "Don't even dream about it. If you have time to go out and cause such a ruckus, why don't you spend some time reading that document, you useless thing?" Holding the paper she threw, he remarked, "A document? Oh, is it from the emperor?" According to historical records, the Black Dragon chose his own mate during your reign. His Majesty the Emperor will also choose a mate in a similar manner. The selection criteria are only for ladies from traditional noble families. However, ladies from the Ruthingen region will not be selected. After reading, Akerlins laughed and said, "How childish. Is he publicly isolating Ruthingen?" Fasolin approached him and said, "That's not all. Those two, Usman and Besa, are probably plotting to usurp your power. They're trying to show that I am an illegitimate mate, simply chosen." After speaking, she glanced at him and thought, "I don't really care. I can take this opportunity to provoke this guy a little." Fasolin smiled and looked at him meaningfully. "Oh my, but it seems they are not entirely wrong. Who can say for sure that the woman you chose back then wasn't your real mate? Unlike me, who was not chosen by you." Akerlins didn't dare to look her in the eye, avoiding her gaze and stammering, "Well, I was too young then to understand this matter clearly. It was also 200 years ago." Hearing this, Fasolin thought, that excuse of being young is not enough to justify it when you are over 4,000 years old. Akerlins, seeing that she didn't believe him, continued, "Now I can't even remember her name. I only did it because of that naive desire at the time, not wanting to follow a predetermined destiny." Fasolin said softly, "Destiny," she thought, becoming emperor and protecting the Liopa Empire, finding a mate and making her the empress. That must be the destiny he spoke of as a dragon. Was the fact that I loved Akerlins in the past also a preordained destiny? And was Akerlins at that time just trying to resist a destiny that he never wanted to accept? Seeing her silence, Akerlins bowed his head and said sincerely, "I apologize for making you endure these insults. Even so, you were and are my true mate." Fasolin replied gently, "I don't mind. It's nothing compared to what you have done to me. However, I find it very annoying that the people of Ruttingen are also insulted like this. Those who have settled in this harsh northern land are also Liopa citizens just like everyone else." She continued unhappily, "The fact that the Emperor is isolating Ruttingen is so ridiculous it makes one furious. Isn't this your territory? Are you going to let them be so complacent?" Akerlins called her name softly, Fasolin. Not responding to him, she continued unhappily, "I'm bored because there's nothing to do here. Maybe because in my past life, I never had a day off." Then she suddenly looked at him, smiled, and suggested, "Why don't you give me some temporary position to kill time? I promise to stay in the castle, so you can easily keep an eye on me." Akerlin smiled lightly and said, "Very well, I will appoint you as the Countess of Ruttingen. You can do whatever you like." Fasolin asked again in disbelief, Countess?" She stood up angrily and said loudly, "I said I want an official position." Akerlin smiled happily and said, "Of course, you can officially become the Countess, but if you refuse, you could just stay in this room forever. I don't mind." Fasolin, frustrated, ruffled her hair and replied, "Fine, but you must swear to pay me a decent salary. I need to save up to leave this country as quickly as possible." Akerlin smiled and replied, "Of course, I will pay you a handsome salary, though I will not allow you to go anywhere." Hearing his assurance, she put the document down and said, "All right, now then, let's plan how we're going to take down that Usman." In the bedroom, her voice rang out clearly. "First, we will appease the nobles of Ruttingen. I'm sure they're feeling deeply insulted right now. Then we will control Impel this way." Akerlin stood beside her and replied, "That's a good strategy." Fasolin continued, "I will go and persuade them, and here we can." Akerlins replied cheerfully, "Sounds good. I think we will have enough resources to supply." On Akerlins, an image of his majestic past self flickered as he said, "Have you thought about my coronation ceremony?" Fasolin, too, with the same intelligence and seriousness as her past life, replied, "I'm afraid your hot temper won't be able to withstand Usman's provocations for long. It's just a matter of time." Akerlins said with difficulty, "You're right." He thought, "Although we have returned to the past, one thing has not changed. Even though you have been hurt by so many people here, you still maintain that fierce loyalty to Liopa." In a meeting of state officials, a man angrily slammed the table and shouted, "Are the people of Ruttingen not citizens of Liopa? This document is clearly a conspiracy to separate Ruttingen from the Empire, and this is being done by a young dragon who is only 1,000 years old." Another person spoke up to calm him down. Now, calm down. We have made a decision. This is Marquis Lick, the head of the nobility in Ruttingen." He continued, "As you all know, Ruttingen's winter is extremely harsh, but we are all too used to it. And so are our daughters. They were born and raised in this cold land, like the most resilient wild horses. They will never go to Impel. The ones who will have to struggle to survive the long winter are those weak bastards in Impel. The sweet fruits that blossom after a long winter of discrimination and oppression will surely be very sweet. Akerlens is the only one worthy of sitting on the throne and holding the role of protector of Leopa. We will make it a reality. Scene change. At that moment at Akerlens' place, he couldn't help but cough up blood. He thought, I must have overused my powers recently. The consequences of turning back time are lasting longer than I thought. Well, anyway, once everything is back in its rightful place, my body will recover quickly. Then he looked up at the sky where white snowflakes were falling, smiled, and said, I have to admit that the long winter has its own charm. Just now, Akerlens gave Isolin a diamond ring and said, this is your advance payment. She replied, unhappily, can't you just give me cash? It's a hassle to sell this thing. Akerlens smiled and continued, gold coins are heavy. They will slow you down if you want to run away from me. In the office, Hasolin thought, because I have returned to the past, it means I know all the events that will happen in the future. While writing, she told herself, I will exploit the gold mine in the north first, which won't be discovered for another 8 years. I will also buy this accessory in advance. It will be very popular next year, and I will have the seaport area renovated to promote trade with other countries. She raised her hand to adjust her glasses and continued with a smile. I was worried about how to make money, but I have a solution thanks to knowing the future. I will not only make Rittengen, but the entire northern region prosperous, so that people will come here on their own. I can't wait. But Hasolin's ambitious plan failed miserably. At that moment, someone suddenly ran up to announce. Hasolin said loudly in disbelief, what? The mine collapsed? Vitali continued, yes, fortunately, everyone felt the earthquake and evacuated in time, so there were no casualties, but it will be a long time before we can continue mining. Hasolin held her head and said, impossible. She muttered to herself, then we won't be able to make the order in time. Standing next to her, Akerlin said calmly, why was there such a sudden earthquake? Vitali replied, well, you see, it seems that the descendant of the white dragon has awakened. After a dragon ascends to the throne, they will have a child with their mate. That dragon child will grow up until it chooses a hiding place and falls into a deep sleep. Currently, among the 5 dragons sleeping in Rittengen, 2 are descendants of Logila. Among them, the smallest white dragon has woken up. At that moment in the hallway, Hasolin was following behind Akerlens and said, so, are you going to protect that young dragon? He replied gently, that is one of the duties that the Count of Rittengen must perform. Hasolin wondered, but in the past life, the white dragon never woke up. Why have things changed like this? Akerlens explained gently, it's probably because I used my power in the ocean surrounding Rittengen. She must have felt my energy and woken up. Opening the door to the room, he said, but it's fine, I just need to make her go back to sleep. Inside the room, a small child with long hair and eyes the color of sparkling blue gems called out gently, Uncle, this is the daughter of Logila, the white dragon, Dennis. Seeing this, Hasolin couldn't help but cover her mouth and think, so cute. Akerlens, however, was different. He just said faintly, I knew it was you, Dennis. Dennis ran to him and replied, yes, I'm awake. Akerlens bent down to pick her up and asked, are you not going to sleep anymore? She leaned against his chest and asked in a small voice, no, but uncle, where is my mom? Akerlens replied coldly, dead. Standing behind, Hasolin loudly interrupted, hey, you can't talk to a child like that. Akerlens said, confused, a child? She's several decades older than you. Hasolin couldn't accept this fact. She cried in disbelief. In his arms, Dennis cried loudly, choking out, both mom and dad are gone. Holding her in his arms, Akerlens asked softly, do you want me to take you to Impio? Dennis quickly shook her head, looking at him with teary eyes, and said, I don't want to go to Impio. There's no one left there. Please let me live here with you, uncle. Standing beside them, Hasolin saw this and smiled, thinking she looks just like Logila, so cute. When he put her down, Dennis glanced at Hasolin and said coldly, hey you, why are you just standing there so disrespectfully? Bow now. Hasolin asked, confused, huh? Dennis scolded unhappily. Wipe that stupid look off your face. Hasolin asked again, huh? Dennis threatened coldly. You'll never be of any help to my uncle with that face. Sleeping for so long has made me hungry. Bring me some candy right now. These words immediately extinguished Hasolin's cheerful mood. She thought angrily, these damn dragons. Remembering the image of Logila smiling and saying, please take good care of my daughter. She had to hold it in. At that moment, Akerlens spoke up to remind her. Dennis, don't be so disrespectful. Solon is my mate. Hasolin immediately denied, no, I'm not. Akerlens said firmly, yes, you are. Hasolin coldly denied, I am not. Akerlens affirmed, you definitely are. Hasolin quickly cut in, saying, not at all. He stubbornly continued, you. She also refused to back down, replying, not even a little. Seeing this, Dennis said to herself, well, Uncle is definitely right. She ran quickly to Hasolin, bowed, and said with a smile, it's a pleasure to meet you. I sincerely apologize for my rude behavior just now. Hasolin thought in disbelief. You? While Akerlens was very happy to hear that. Hasolin sat down and said to Dennis, Your Highness, please don't call me that. I'm not the mate of that idiot. I am not his mate. Dennis said, confused, but I have never seen Uncle so desperate for someone like this. Are you really not his mate? She looked at Hasolin and continued, actually, if you look closely, I can tell that you two are from the future. Mom must be very angry. Hearing this, Akerlens smiled happily, patted her head, and praised, this little dragon is really sharp. That stupid golden dragon would never have noticed. Hasolin said softly, that has nothing to do with me being his mate. At that moment, Dennis's stomach suddenly rumbled. She said to Akerlens, I'm hungry. He quickly replied, I'll have them prepare some dishes for you. Hasolin also added, you need to eat a main meal before you can have candy. Your Highness. Scene change, now at Tyrant's residence. Boris opened the door and entered, saying, There's urgent news from Ruttingen, Your Highness. Tyrant just made a bored sound, then sat up and took the notice, saying, Solo Gila's daughter has awakened. You mean that dragon child? Boris replied respectfully, Yes. Tyrant smiled with interest and said, It seems that Black Dragon suddenly has to do some babysitting. This news has also reached Impio, right? Boris replied, Yes. This will probably further strengthen Ruttingen's defense line. Tyrant said leisurely, No need to rush. I may have failed this time, but there will be many more opportunities in the future for me to steal that Black Dragon's mate. Then he lay down again and continued, Now I have to lay low for a while. That Black Dragon must be furious after my first move. Therefore, if I am careless. Boris stammered, by the way, Your Highness, there's a report that the third prince departed for Ruttingen yesterday morning. Tyrant asked in disbelief, What? At that moment on the sea, Lourdes laughed happily and said loudly, What a smooth sailing. As long as I capture that dragon's mate, the throne of Sorok will be mine. Maurice was riding a horse with Dennis. He said worriedly, Whoa, please slow down, Your Highness. From behind, Hasolin also reminded, Don't go too far. Dennis quickly replied, Yes. Remembering what Dennis said earlier, I want to see the sea. Now Hasolin had to take her horseback riding to the sea. She thought helplessly, why did they push the babysitting job onto me? It's not uncommon for dragon children like Dennis to awaken. If she were an Impio, she would be busy studying to be an heir by now. Dragon children are usually quite sensitive, have big egos, and are in great need of adult guidance. Even though they will become rulers of the country later, they can't be perfect right from the egg. At that moment, Maurice, sitting behind Dennis, said worriedly, Your Highness, please slow down. It's dangerous. Dennis replied without a care, Don't worry. Suddenly, an arrow flew from nowhere and hit the leg of the horse she was riding. The horse struggled in pain, causing Maurice and Dennis to fall to the ground. Maurice held her in his arms, frightened, and cried, Your Highness. From behind, Hasolin also called out worriedly, Your Highness, Sir Maurice. Looking back at the distant rock, she thought, An ambush? Hasolin quickly ran to the two of them and said loudly, Your Highness, are you all right? Sir Maurice, can you stand up? Maurice cried out in pain a few times and said, I think I sprained my ankle. Her Highness has fainted, but luckily she's not injured. Hasolin frowned and said quickly, The princess's safety must be the priority. Take her back to the castle and call for reinforcements. Maurice asked worriedly, What about you, my lady? Suddenly, many arrows were shot at the three of them without warning. Hasolin turned back and yelled, Have you forgotten? No matter the situation, protecting the dragon clan must always be the priority. I still have my powers, so don't worry about anything and go, hurry up. Maurice couldn't help but curse. Damn it. Then he quickly got on the horse and said, I will call for reinforcements right away. Watching him leave, Hasolin thought, Akerlens will detect this raid soon. I just need to hold on until then. Suddenly, an arrow flew and hit her right in the calf, making her unable to move anymore. Just then, Lourdes appeared, arrogantly saying, Wow, what an unexpected catch. I didn't expect to capture the Black Dragon's mate as soon as I arrived. Luck is on my side today. He is the third prince of Sorok, Lourdes Marquine. As he approached, Hasolin trembling in pain, thought, this energy, is it a tiger? Is he from the royal family of Sorek? After a moment, she spoke up angrily. Are you targeting me? Why do the tigers of Sorek always covet what doesn't belong to them? Lourdes moved closer to her and replied, so that Tyrant fellow has been here? But why are you still here? Was he not to your taste? What about me then? Let's go to Sorek and get married, he said as he grabbed her hair to lift her head. Hasolan contemptuously spat in his face. This truly enraged Lourdes. He swung his axe and said, looks like I'll have to kill you, huh? At this moment, Hasolan was lost in thought. Even if I use my power to try and defend myself. But can I deal with those soldiers? If I die here, will I have to return to that disgusting dragon abyss? As she closed her eyes, about to give up everything, Turin suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking the axe and shouting loudly. Stop! Hasolan thought it was Akerlens who had come, but she was disappointed when she realized it wasn't. At this moment, Turin was furious. He yelled, you fool, are you trying to destroy our entire nation? Lourdes frowned and said, Turin, shut up, get away from me. Without replying to him, Turin turned around and asked worriedly, Hasolan, are you all right? Can you run? Hasolan was now in so much pain she was breaking out in a cold sweat. She gave a bitter smile and said, with this leg? Really? Seeing Lourdes charging towards them, Turin angrily shouted, damn it, Boris! From behind. Boris quickly ran up and replied, yes. Yes, my lord. He walked up to Hasolan, handed her a leaf, and said with a smile, here, my lady, chew on this herb. Before he could finish his sentence, a storm with continuous thunder and lightning broke out in the sky. Boris thought to himself, it's too late. A bolt of lightning struck the ground. Akerlens appeared with a grim face. Turin spoke in disbelief. Oh no, that's... Akerlens cut him off coldly, saying, not only did you set your filthy feet on my land, but you also dared to touch my mate? You must not value your lives very much. As punishment, today, Sorek will be annihilated. He came before her and asked with concern, how is your wound? Solon sulkily turned her face away. You're too late. He frowned with worry. Let me see. The wound isn't too deep, thank goodness. She remained silent with a somber face. After checking Solon's wound, Akerlund stood up to deal with them. Well then, with a murderous glint in his eyes, he said in a low voice, shall we start the tiger hunt? Boris was already hiding behind Turin, while Lourdes still didn't understand anything. Turin spoke in a panic. Hey, wait, hold on. I didn't do anything. I didn't touch anyone. I even saved his Solon, right? Boris nodded repeatedly in confirmation. That's right, your highness, save your mate. Akerlund stepped forward and continued. Even so, it doesn't negate the fact that you try to take Solon to Sorek. Just hearing that made their hair stand on end. Ak, Turin raised his hands to plead. But this whole incident was caused by my foolish brother. You can do whatever you want to him. I swear Sorek will not interfere. So please let me and my guard go. Boris squeezed his eyes shut and shouted, we even gave first aid to your mate, so please don't take your anger out on our entire country like this. Akerlund narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment. Very well, it seems the fault isn't yours anyway, but don't expect me to be so generous and lenient next time. Lourdes, on the other hand, still didn't know death was upon him. He said in a loud voice, haha, what nonsense are you spouting? I am Lourdes McQueen, the third prince of Sorek, and I came here to kill you. Before he could finish his sentence, a flash of light streaked past his head. Only two broken words could be heard. Diaragon, huh? Followed by someone's terrified scream. Prince Lourdes. Blood splattered everywhere along with a hurried cry for help. Help! Turin grabbed his guard by the collar and fled for his life. Well done, Boris. Run straight ahead. Don't look back. Yes, my lord. Turin glanced back and thought to himself, I've done everything I can. Now I should put my pride aside and hope that mad dragon shows some mercy. The fate of Sorek is in her hands. Solon looked at Lourdes's severed head and body and thought to herself, why did I call Akerlund's name just now? And why was I disappointed when it wasn't him? This time, I had decided to live for myself. But again, I sacrificed myself to protect Princess Dennis, and I still can't take my eyes off that man's back. No matter how hard I try, everything is still the same. Solon covered her face and sobbed. Nothing has changed, and I just reliving the past. Suddenly, Akerlund spoke up. No, which surprised her. He stood in front of her and comforted her. It's not like that, Hasolan. The past will not repeat itself. I will not let that happen. With that, he reached his hand out to her, but she angrily slapped his hand away and yelled, don't touch me. Akerlunds said in a low, sad voice. I told you, we should start everything over. Remembering the image of Akerlunds cutting her hair, he said, forget the bad things in the past. I told you to forget everything that happened between us. We can start over from the beginning here right now. Akerlunds was dejected. Actually, I know that's impossible. But can't you slowly forget it? The foolish dragon who didn't even recognize his own mate. And poor Hasolanadia, you have to bear all the burdens of that dragon. Akerlunds knelt before her sincerely. I'm sorry for being so selfish. It's okay if you never forgive me. But please let me be by your side, whether in this life or the next. I will not leave you. She was stunned by his words. I swear it. Her heart seemed to tighten. It was pounding. She thought sadly, oh, I see. Even if I'm deceived by this man time and time again, and have suffered enough sorrow and indignation to give up everything, I still can't escape this damn fate. She gripped the arrow, then she decisively pulled it out. Fine, let's see who wins. What's one more scar to me? She frowned at him. Do whatever you want, just like always. He looked at her, puzzled. Then he smiled happily. Thank you, Solon. Solon let him carry her away, her heart full of turmoil. Don't worry, I won't try to run away from you anymore. Instead, I will stay by your side and return all the pain and indignation you have caused in the cruelest and most painful way I can. The next day, a loud wailing sound came from inside the mansion. Dennis was crying her eyes out. Wow, I'm sorry. Sobi, you got you here to because of me. Solon grew tense, hearing her cry. I'm fine, Your Highness, please don't cry. Dennis listened and wiped her tears. Suddenly, the little girl jumped up and pointed at Maurice angrily. This is your fault. You should have protected her better. Maurice felt he had been negligent and spoke up. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Looking at the two of them, she sighed to herself. Can you two just leave me in peace for a bit? While dodging Dennis's blows, he turned his head to relay a message. The doctor said you shouldn't walk for a month. I know it will be uncomfortable, but please refrain from going out for the time being, my lady. Solon let out a breath and agreed. All right, I have no choice. Could you bring me the documents on the table? Here you are. Thank you, Maurice. While looking through them, she came across something very surprising. This is... The next day, there was a girl in a horse-drawn carriage. A voice from inside the carriage reminded her. My lady, please don't open the window. The wind will mess up your hair. A soft voice replied. Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to get some fresh air. You know how important choosing a mate is to your family. If you are chosen as the emperor's mate, you will become the empress of this empire. Yes, I know. The girl with purple hair looked into the distance and continued. I understand that better than anyone. At the Ruttingen residence, Vitali was reporting on his work. Turin McQueen has drawn his sword. He is slowly eliminating his brothers to seize the throne. Akerlunds discussed. He must be desperate by now. What about the former emperor of Sorik? Suddenly, a voice was heard along with the sound of approaching footsteps. It's time for His Majesty to ascend to the heavens. That's what the people of Sorik are talking about. Hearing the voice coming from the door, both of them looked over. It was Count Lick. He entered and bowed. Forgive my interruption. As the door was open, I request an audience, Your Highness. Akerlunds was surprised. Count Lick, what wind brings you here? He smiled and said, I brought a very good medicine for your injured mate. Akerlunds replied lazily, much appreciated. Anything else? He immediately presented a document. The candidates for the mate are gathering in MPO. Akerlunds took it and listened intently as he explained. It seems a grand banquet will be held to select a mate for the emperor. He frowned in annoyance. What? On her side, Solon also received the news. A banquet? It will start right after the emperor finds a mate, and even nobles from distant regions are required to attend. There's no way I'm going. Akerlunds, on the contrary, said, I will go. I knew you would say that. Then he lowered his voice again. You should let the emperor know who the real dragon with a mate is. On the day of the mate selection, a girl was kneeling amidst much gossip. Duke Schumacher stood up to plead for the girl. Please retract your order, Your Majesty. Such a punishment is too severe for a young lady. The emperor, Usmund, remained indifferent. So what? She dared to insult me right to my face. In fact, she should be grateful to me. I'm more than willing to cut out that filthy tongue myself. The Duke still tried to persuade him. Please have mercy, Your Majesty. This punishment is too harsh. The man named Sisa beside him shouted, Know your place, Duke Schumacher. You are a royal duke, so you should act accordingly. You represent the authority of this palace. Duke Schumacher advised gloomily. I only hope that your reign will be recorded in history as a peaceful one. Your Majesty. Usmund waved his hand in annoyance. Enough. I understand. Now get that woman out of my sight. Then he pointed to a lady standing below. And you. The blonde-haired lady was startled. Me, your Majesty? Anyone will do. Come out here and liven things up a bit. I'm bored to death. The girl hesitated. Aye. Then a purple-haired lady stepped forward. Your Majesty. She curtsied. I am Elena Dunnamison. I am greatly honored to obey your command. Next, she opened her fan, lifting it to her face to hide her smile. Although I fear it may not satisfy your Majesty's refined taste. But please allow me to perform an exotic dance that cannot be found anywhere else in Loophole. Emperor Usmund was intrigued. Oh, below, Milena began to perform a gentle, graceful dance. The emperor clapped in delight. Wonderful. Duke Schumacher, however, looked at him with great displeasure. Usmund exclaimed to the person beside him, I finally feel like I'm sitting on the dragon throne. Sisa, I am very happy to hear you say that, your Majesty. Then he turned to the Duke and asked, and you must be very pleased too, right, Duke Schumacher? Ha. He gritted his teeth and replied, of course. Usmund suddenly had an idea. Oh, that reminds me, I was thinking, what if I choose many mates instead of just one? Would that make me superior to the Black Dragon? Ha. You're so amusing, your Majesty. The Duke broke out in a sweat upon hearing this. Is he really joking? Outside the palace, people were gathered and gossiping. A short-haired person asked, why was that young lady sent back? A blonde-haired person added, but she's intelligent and talented. A long-haired person also said, exactly, and that dancer gets to stay? The short-haired person wondered, what kind of dragon chooses its own mate? The long-haired person educated him. I know of a record that says 200 years ago, the Elector of Ruttingen also chose his own mate, but he only tried to choose a mate. He didn't actually do it. Yeah, that's a huge difference. Meanwhile, inside the royal palace, Duke Schumacher walked behind Emperor Usmund and Sisa, trying to dissuade them. Please, your Majesty, you can't just keep all the candidates in the palace forever. Usmund turned back unhappily and retorted, shut up, you always oppose my decisions. I've already reduced the number by half. Duke Schumacher still tried to advise, it's not me who opposes it, but your subjects. The position of Empress can only be for one person. Sisa then added, he has a point, you should reconsider the candidates carefully. There will surely be some who displease your Majesty. Is that so? Then Usmund said to the Duke, then let me reconsider. You may leave. Royal Duke. The Duke finally relaxed. Thank you for your consideration, your Majesty. Then he turned and left. Usmund muttered, having the candidates perform musical instruments at the upcoming banquet isn't a bad idea. Do you have your eye on anyone in particular? Usmund pondered, not yet. But that dancer from earlier was quite impressive. Her name was Milena, right? Sisa suggested, the entire empire will be overjoyed when you choose a mate, and a grand banquet will be held after you've chosen one, right? Why don't you invite the Count of Ruttingen? Usmund frowned and asked back, what? Do I have to invite him? Sisa continued, currently, the woman he loves is bedridden with a leg injury. Whether she is his mate or not, this is the perfect opportunity to eliminate an obstacle, right? He continued to brainwash Usmund. Nothing in this empire is beyond your reach. Mobilize the secret special forces of the Royal Guard. That way, no matter what happens, your Majesty will never be discovered. And they don't even need to succeed in the assassination. Just distracting Ruttingen's attention will be enough. Usmund smiled smugly. Very well. Bring me that bitch's head or her tongue. Either will do. Evening at Duke Schumacher's residence. He was still working under a dim lamp. He clenched his fist in anger over something he was looking at. In the quiet space, the door opened and the Countess spoke. Why aren't you asleep yet, my love? Rubbing his forehead, he said, I was so lost in thought I didn't notice the time. He told her, Count Lick just sent a letter. She was surprised. Count Lick? One of the prestigious nobles of the north, right? Yes. He said if we move there, he will cover all of our settlement costs. My love. He recalled a past conversation. A long-haired man said, it seems the succession process in Sorik is a bit turbulent this time. The Duke continued, I heard that too. The third prince died in Ruttingen when he recklessly attacked the Black Dragon's mate. The long-haired man asked again, do you know why the White Dragon, once the wisest being in the Empire, sent the Black Dragon to Ruttingen? He closed his eyes and said, I know, but I won't reveal it. The long-haired man smirked. You really are stubborn. You'd be better off if you occasionally simplified things like me. While the Emperor is indulging in worldly pleasures. The corpse of the Soric prince is hanging on the walls of Ruttingen. He laughed and looked at him, asking, "Who do you think is acting like a true ruler here?" Ending the memory, the Duke said to his wife, "As someone who swore loyalty to the royal palace, I have hesitated to make a decision until now. But I don't think I can recognize Usmund as the true emperor." Then he decided we should move to Ruttingen. He also had a worry. That place may have the strongest militia and loophole, but it's very cold there. I'm worried about how you'll fare since you've lived your whole life in the south. The Duchess came over and massaged him. She comforted, "Don't worry, my love. One day, we will return to Impio." The next day, at the Ruttingen residence, a maid exclaimed in surprise, "Oh my, it's like spring has come to you, my lady." Solon was speechless, only managing a forced laugh. "Ha ha ha." Looking at the flowers surrounding Solon, the maid said again, "So His Highness brings you fresh flowers every day. At this rate, your room will turn into a garden." Just then, Akerlunds walked in, to the maid's suspicion. He called out, "Solon, I've come to visit you," with a large bouquet of flowers. When Solon saw him, her face turned purple with anger. "Please stop visiting me." He still didn't notice her expression and only asked with concern, "Is your leg recovering well?" Solon pointed irritably at the flowers and said, "When you leave, can you take these bouquets with you?" Akerlunds disagreed. "You shine brighter than all the flowers here, so I think it's fine to leave them." Solon could only fume inwardly. It's like talking to a wall. She forced a smile and said, "Then at least give me back the papers I was looking at." Placing the bouquet in a vase, he advised her, "You need to rest to recover quickly." Hearing this, Solon immediately lifted her skirt to show him, "Isn't it that you don't want me to get better, because I can't run away with this injured leg?" Akerlunds looked at her and chuckled. "Are you planning to run away again? If you run, I'm not sure how many bite marks I'll leave on your body." As soon as the words were out, a pillow flew at his face. Luckily, he dodged it quickly. Akerlunds teased her, "You shouldn't throw pillows on the floor like that." Solon was trembling with anger. Her hands clenched. "Please have some dignity. Your Highness, if you dare to bare your teeth near me again, I'll use my own teeth to tear you to shreds. But for now, you can rest assured, I still have to wait and see if you can really keep your promise. Until then, I won't run away anymore. Solon, I'm bored. Hurry up and give me something to do. The paperwork is all done. Now we just need to inspect the castle repairs." "What? But I can't walk." As she finished, he bent down and swept her up into his arms. Akerlund smiled happily. "It's okay. You don't have to walk yourself." Solon was still trembling. "Just how bad is your memory?" A moment later, hurried footsteps echoed in the mansion's hallway. Then suddenly there was the sound of footsteps hiding in the shadows. Akerlund stopped and didn't move further. She looked up at him in surprise. "Your Highness." She only saw Akerlund's glance slightly behind him. "I can't hear you breathing. You came from Impio, yet you're so impolite." Impio? The sound of footsteps accompanied by the glint of someone's sword appeared. He rushed towards the two of them. He swung his sword, but he was blocked by Akerlunds. She watched the scene and thought to herself, "Assassins." I couldn't even see their movements. Watching them being pushed back by Akerlunds, she remarked, "These guys are on a completely different level from the assassins I met in Impio." Akerlunds looked at her and said with a smile, "It seems the castle has too many damaged spots. We should finish the repairs as soon as possible, right, Solon?" She didn't even look at him. "I wouldn't care if you let me die here." "Forgive me, I can't do that." Then his eyes flashed yellow as he looked towards the assassins. A black mist made them unable to bear. A second later, they were all lying on the ground. Solon looked up at the scene before her and thought, Akerlunds' black mist can suffocate enemies. I never thought I'd see it again after. The Civil War. A cough was heard, followed by a spray of blood appearing on the floor. Solon asked with concern, "What's wrong, Your Highness?" Cough. "I'm fine. I haven't used that power in a long time, so I'm just a little tired." Solon looked at him, puzzled. How strange. Why would Akerlunds cough up blood just from using such a small amount of power? He looked at the assassins and said, "Anyway, since Usman's minions have managed to infiltrate Ruttingen Castle, we need to be prepared. What if they were sent by the Lord of Soric? If they were from Soric, their swordsmanship wouldn't be so familiar. Your Highness, how long do you think you can stay in Ruttingen? You don't like it here? Eventually, someone will want to put you on the throne. I heard that Usmund ordered the tongue of one of his mate candidates to be cut out. If your destiny is to become emperor, shouldn't you reclaim the crown before that Usmund harms more people?" Akerlunds looked at her and smiled. Solon truly has a kind heart. She cares about this empire more than anyone. That's why she got involved with me. In the first place, However, haven't you realized yet, no one in this empire, not even yourself, cares about you? Akerlunds looked at her solemnly and said, Solon, I would rather chop off the heads of all the nobles who want me to be emperor, annihilate that arrogant country of tigers, and start a civil war with that golden brat, than become a lonely emperor without an empress by my side. Scene changed to the Sauric Empire. A loud noise is heard. A short-haired man fell to the ground and yelled, You brat. Tyrant walked towards him with a scornful smile. Instead of wasting time talking like that, why don't you run? Then a sound of pain was heard, and blood splattered. Boris felt a chill watching. Congratulations, Your Highness. Now only you and the youngest prince are the only two surviving princes. You should get used to this, Boris. Yes, I will try. Both the Black Dragon, who granted Sorik a moment of grace, damn him, and the Golden Dragon of MPO, who pretended to be generous while throwing gifts at me, are just deceitful bastards. Now there isn't just one, but two dragons in Loophole. The Black Dragon wasn't just making empty threats. He really wants to annihilate Sorik. I know full well that no tiger can escape the dragon's claws on its own. Turin gritted his teeth in resentment. If only my brothers were a little less foolish, but there were two such fools. Prepare the carriage, Boris. What for? I'm going to MPO. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. On Solon's side, at this moment the two of them were outside, enjoying the view. Akerlunds was still in a very good mood. The weather is beautiful. Solon, sitting on a chair, asked him, The assassins who attacked us just now, they were the royal guard, right? Unfortunately, I don't have any proof. Akerlunds asked with a smile, Do you want to interrogate the assassins being held in the dungeon? The royal guard. They're elite soldiers who serve and receive orders directly from the emperor. They only obey the emperor's orders, doing everything from gathering intelligence and guarding to assassination, and they excel at all of it. But their most important duty is to protect the empress, the mate and the dragon's only weakness. It's terrifying, isn't it? The army created to protect the empress was sent to take your life. I'm not the empress. Besides, you promised to protect me, so who else in this empire can harm me? You're right, Solon. He sat down, lifted her leg, and continued, I won't make the same mistake again. I will win your heart completely. He checked her wound. It seems your leg is almost healed. What a relief, but also a little disappointing. I still want to carry you all over MPO. With that, he placed a kiss on her wound. Solon blushed and didn't dare to look at him. Please don't say such scary things. And who said I would go to MPO? I don't want to be paraded as a trophy again. He continued for her. Since I was invited to the banquet celebrating the emperor's choice of a mate, I should also attend as a loyal subject, right? Of course, you can also go by yourself. He wasn't reassured and leave you here alone? If you're joking, it's not funny at all. What if more assassins come? Solon replied cheerfully, Then I'll just die. You can always turn back time, right? Don't worry about me. Didn't you say you would stop the emperor's cruel actions? If that Usman doesn't know his place, then we should personally teach him a lesson, right? You think so too, don't you? So come to Impio with me. Solon lowered her eyes and thought, If I go with Akerlunds, all eyes will be on us. This damn dragon is definitely planning to take me to Impio to make everyone believe I'm his mate. I absolutely will not let that happen. Not like how Akerlunds humiliated me in the past. Each memory flashed by. Is this supposed to be a dragon? My crocheting skills are terrible. So what if this time I make a fool out of him? I will let him taste the sweet fruit of hope, and then finally cruelly stab him in the back. Let's see if you still dare to call me your mate then. After thinking it through, she agreed. Very well. Let's go to Impel. The next morning, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, convoys of carriages entered Impel. The procession was so large it drew everyone's attention. Look, nobles from all over the empire are flocking to the emperor's banquet. He's holding a banquet, right, after choosing a mate? I really don't understand what the emperor is thinking anymore. Two young men were surprised. That symbol. Did you see it too? It's Ruttingen, the symbol of Count Ruttingen, Your Highness. A joyful sound. The Black Dragon has returned to Impel. In the royal palace, Usman heard the news and slumped into his chair. He trembled and bit his hand. Sesha saw this and reassured him, Your Majesty, you don't need to worry so much. Usman turned back and snapped, How can you be so calm, Sesha? I sent the royal guards as you advised, and yet she still appeared completely unharmed in. Here, and now that black dragon is attracting the attention of all the nobles? Sesha remained confident. This isn't Ruttingen. The black dragon is no match for you here in Impel. Everything has been arranged, you can rest assured. He thought, it's a pity we couldn't blame Sora for that assassination attempt. The black dragon must have known Impel was behind everything and has come for revenge. But all information about the royal guards is only known to the reigning emperor. How could he possibly know? Not to mention, I thought no one from the royal guards could have survived and returned. Yet someone survived and reported everything. I saw it with my own eyes. The black dragon vomited blood. Could it be that I've missed something about that black dragon? Suddenly, the sound of an audience being announced cut off Sesha's train of thought. It is an honor to have an audience with you, Your Majesty the Emperor. Startling Yuzman, who turned around. Yuzman wondered, you? Turin suggested, I wonder if you need a tiger for your hunt?